Visible,
with liberty.
liberty, and justice for all.
All right, everybody has the agenda, I assume. We'll go right into the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Do I have a second? That was kind of cool. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. First, I just wanted to take a second to, it was on the buildings and ground stuff. If we can, maybe somebody could come up with a form that, we could type that in. So Mike's not forced to basically handwrite the stuff all the time. But that was my only comment. Does anybody have any other comments about or questions, concerns on the consent agenda? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? Okay, motion pass. All right, let's go to the BOCES Spotlight. It's basically, their monthly update. I do think we need to have a discussion about our, whatever you want to call it, our response or our questions to BOCES about the delays on the project. I was sort of disappointed that, this was just really kind of a highlights version and not some discussion about that. But maybe we'll discuss that in, well, I don't know. I don't think that needs, but we do need to put it on the agenda. All right. The continuing disclosure statement. Did you guys, I'm assuming, well, we can kind of, do we have a motion to approve? Or do we have to approve a motion here?
This is just for your information. This is our annual disclosure that we do every single year. We pay for it to get done for us. It's about $1,300, which is a reduction from when we changed over. It used to be around $1,900. And it's just a disclosure to all of our investors who have participated in the purchasing of bonds for us to be able to do financing. And it just shares the financial condition of this school district. And
Okay.
It's just informational.
No, the only sort of question, comment, it seems to have a pattern to it, Brian, like it goes 25, 30, 30, 35, 40, 40, you know what I mean? Is this just sort of an estimate, or is this, are these numbers founded in the, like that's exactly what we're paying?
What page are you on? Are you just on the first, the page 4?
No, well, let me see if I can figure out what page this is. Yes, page 4.
Okay.
Where it just, like it says 2021 is 635, then it goes 660, which is 25 more. Then it goes 30 to 690, then another 30. And it just keeps using that pattern. I mean, it goes 5,000 higher, but
Yeah.
It's sort of a pattern.
Yeah. So what you see on there is exact based on the amortization rates of what we're paying.
That's interesting. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay. All right. Now the presentation on an energy performance contract. I thought this was a good time to do this because most of us have never been through it or been through it, barely at the end of one. So I thought it was a good opportunity to get everybody aware of what an energy performance contract is and how they're done. And then we can have some discussion on where this should head. So why don't you guys go ahead?
Great. Thank you for having me here. Sorry, I'm just getting my screen all set up here. My name's Aldo Mazzaferro. I'm an engineer with the ECG group. And, thank you for that introduction. We're going to walk you through some of the considerations of an energy performance contract, some of the history of an EPC at the school district with you guys, and, different things to consider in these preliminary phases where you're not even sure if there is a project or if you want to do a project yet. This is really just an introduction. I'm here to answer any questions or concerns you may have. And we'll go from there. So, kick things off a little bit about my firm. We worked with the school district starting back in 2010, I want to say, probably even a few years before that, on the phase 1 energy performance contract. And I do have a little more information on that project in the coming slides, but bottom line with our service, we're specialists in this. We provide owner's representative engineering services for our school districts. And think of us really as a member of your staff. We have comprehensive service from beginning all the way through the closeout through into the performance period where you're seeing the guaranteed savings. And we've really honed this service over about 125 EPC projects. The majority of those are in New York, but some of our other bigger references and clients, we're working with Pittsburgh schools, Philadelphia schools, numerous cities and school districts throughout Connecticut. The bottom line is our job, we're here to protect the district's interests in this project. It's a big, complex project, a lot of implications of decisions you need to make, things you need to review. We do all that due diligence on your behalf because we're experts in this. We see it every single day. Like I said, the majority of our clients are in New York. We are based out of Long Island. We did the phase 1 with Millbrook schools, but we do have some of our local references up here. You'll see, the biggest takeaway from this slide I like to point out is how many districts are doing phase 2 work. I think there's a few phase 3s in there. And I had a call earlier today talking to a client about a potential phase 4 work. And a lot of that is driven by the advance of technology, new opportunities to further drive savings, further reduce your greenhouse gas emissions with this laser focused energy project.
And you're going to talk about what a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 project is, right?
Yep.
Good, thanks.
So what is an EPC? Let's start there. This was enacted by the New York State energy law known as Article 9. And really, if you read that language, it's for a government agency to partner with an energy services company. This was established, I want to say, in the early 90s, but all the way up to the federal government they've been doing these types of EPC projects. I know West Point has done many, many phases. This is done on a village basis all the way up to the federal government. But really, if you read that language, it's a partnership. In this case, it would be between a school district, an energy services company, or an ESCO for short, and an owner's representative like ECG. An energy services company that can be in phase 1. In your first project, it was Johnson Controls. Other companies may be Honeywell or Siemens or Energy Systems Group, Ameresco, Noresco. There's probably about 10 major players in this space. And the idea is these companies will come out with their energy engineers and they identify opportunities for building improvements that will yield guaranteed energy savings. They pay for the upgrades today, and then the district will pay for the project out of the guaranteed savings over the term of the project. So the way this works is they end up identifying a bunch of quick payback items, things like LED lighting and temperature controls that drive a lot of savings, and then you can use that savings to fund things on your capital upgrade list that you need to pay for one way or the other. If you're anticipating a future bond or planning some work, we go straight to your 5-year capital plan and identify what may or may not make sense through an EPC project. There's zero taxpayer impact. We keep it completely budget neutral here in that it's completely funded by your energy budget. You're not going out and raising taxes to pay for this project because you're just offsetting what you're currently paying today to the utility and redirecting those funds into the financing for the project. When I speak to clients, I find I'm almost learning every day that there's a different reason why a client might be doing an EPC project. There's a long list of benefits of going after these. Really, one of the most prolific one is that this is a funding source for your needed capital upgrades, and you get it done, like I said, with zero taxpayer impact because it's budget neutral. And an added bonus here is that there's no voter approval required because, again, it's budget neutral. Now, that's not to say that we wouldn't recommend going out and getting voter approval for this project. You're perfectly entitled to do so. We're helping a lot of districts do that today more than ever because of how tight everyone's budgets are and everything that's going on. Every penny, excuse me, every penny really counts. So we can discuss that further with the district for sure. You're looking at reducing operating costs, maintenance costs on old aging equipment. You're improving the learning environment. A lot of people think straight to lighting, reducing the flicker effect, it's called, of old fluorescent lamps. But you're also improving the learning environment with temperature and climate control, right? You're not going to have the very humid classrooms. You're not going to have overheated classrooms. I can't tell you how many times I've done site visits to schools in the dead of winter and you see windows are open. That's from a poor control system. That's from a steam system that might be needing some maintenance, some tweaks to it. All that is wasted energy and wasted fuel oil, essentially. When you do these projects, they're guaranteed savings. And really, what makes an EPC unique is that it's laser focused on purely energy efficiency. When you do a bond project and plan for that, you're looking at classroom improvements, you're looking at site improvements, things like that. This is a team that's going to come in and competitively audit your facilities. And they do this all day, every day. Every single client of theirs is schools. So they know exactly what they're looking for. And they come in and will look at all these different opportunities and guarantee the savings. By doing so, this project is a more effective approach than anything else in driving your energy baseline down because it looks at every single opportunity. And by driving your baseline down, you're also driving down your greenhouse gas emissions as well. And an added benefit, the way ECG goes about developing this is we do this risk-free, cost-free. We're developing it risk-free, cost-free on behalf of the district, I should say. We don't receive compensation unless you move forward with the project. We develop this all at risk so that you have all the answers and you're comfortable when you go to sign on that dotted line. And that can take anywhere from 6 months up to a year. I've worked with clients there. The development period was over 3 to 4 years. Not ideal, but we keep the ball in your court to keep you comfortable as we develop this project. Before we move on to a little more site-specific stuff at the district, any questions about the concept, my services, anything along those lines?
Yes, if it's not energy efficient or the prices for energy go down even more. It's hard to believe, but who takes the loss?
So, in what way? There's two aspects here, right?
Well, if you're guaranteed savings, right, in performance, and if that does not happen, then what?
The ESCO is cutting you a check for the difference. Now, there's a lot of different calculations that go into that, how that check is calculated, and that's a lot of what we do to make sure that you're protected at the end of the day if this project doesn't work. So they're making you whole for the shortfall.
So the ESCO accepts your figures, or they can be challenged?
They will produce their own savings calculations, and the onus is on them to prove it to us, and we're going to witness all of their measurement and verification activities.
Okay, thank you.
So, yes, it's presented to us, and we challenge it regularly, all the time. Okay. The district, like I said, first did an EPC back in around 2010. I think it was closed out 2011, maybe 2012 or so. And it was a very successful project. I wasn't with the district at the time, but I wasn't with the company at the time. But some of the scope highlights, you know, I work with David Newman, if some of you may remember him, if you were around for during that project. It was with Johnson Controls. Some of the scope highlights were upgrading fluorescent lighting, going from old T12 lights, they're called, to T8 lights. Steam trap upgrades, some temperature controls upgrades, and then, like I said in the beginning, one of the capital things, the capital items, the long-term building needs that were funded by this project was a section of window and door replacements at the Alden Elementary School. The project was originally looking at a guarantee of about 100,000 in savings. I believe the final numbers came in about 108,000 or so. So it exceeded the savings in year one. The project was successful. And, you know, one of the things that really aren't quantified by these projects is the emission reduction. So that's become more front of everyone's thinking more than ever in the last few months, last couple of years. And this project actually reduced about 1.2 million pounds of CO2. What that means, you know, there's a lot of different metrics you could apply to that. I like comparing it to cars off the road. So for each year, that's about 100 cars that are no longer driving on the road. If we were to move forward with a phase 2 project, we can structure the project to really focus on maximizing that greenhouse gas emission, maximizing your savings as much as possible. I say it that way because we do have to heat the building, do have to provide lighting in the spaces. You need to maintain a positive learning environment, but some different things to consider here with the phase 2 project. There have been advances in energy efficiency technology, especially since that original EPC. We did talk with the district several times around, I want to say 2015, plus or minus a year or so around there. And we developed some projects. We went through the RFP. I think Johnson Controls was actually engaged. They developed an audit. And at the time, the district just had too many balls up in the air, right? You guys weren't ready to make a commitment to a long-term project like this. So I'm expecting similar technology to be approved, to be proposed in this project, similar size, similar potential savings. But there have been some advances in the industry since then. LED lighting has come a long way. At the time, I believe a lot of it was being what's called a lamp retrofit. Today, a lot of this is the technology the costs have dropped in a way that it makes sense to do a more robust retrofit of the fixture itself. Solar arrays economics have improved. The technology has certainly improved. Back in 2016, we were speccing panels that were about 300 watts per panel. Today, industry practice, you know, very common in the industry to see 400 watts per panel. So what that means is you're able to produce more energy from the same amount of square footage on your roof. Battery technology is right on the cusp. We have not done it in a project yet due to the economics, but I imagine similar to solar, once it hits an inflection point in the economics, the cost and savings, that's going to drive further savings for districts, further greenhouse gas emissions. And then finally, looking at opportunities to reduce fuel oil consumption, which, you know, when we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions, that's really the major villain here, not so much the electric reduction. So that's on your fuel heating side. You know, we've seen different electric heat pumps being installed to supplement some of the shoulder period heating seasons. These are all different ideas that if you want to proceed with this project, we can start looking at these opportunities and speccing out whether we think this may or may not happen, may or may not come in as a proposed. And, you know, we take it really step by step to make sure you're comfortable as we go through. So those are on the quick payback side, right? Driving savings for the project. We'd also look to reduce the size of any future potential bond year funding, right? Or looking to fund or exploring. And the way to do that is to check items right off the list. Usually I default towards HVAC related upgrades, things like boiler upgrades and temperature controls, because an ESCO is then on the hook for the performance of that system. It's a dynamic system. It's not something that's stationary or static in place like a window replacement. So there's a commissioning aspect, making sure that that system, whether it's a boiler or HVAC controls, is installed and performs in various weather conditions, shoulder seasons, heating seasons, things like that. Any questions on previous EPC or potential EPC?
The only, I don't know, I'm hearing echoing. The only real question I have is the last one, and granted, I was only sort of at the end of it.
Although I think we might have to mute while Perry's talking. We're getting some feedback.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe that's me. In the last one that we did, one of the reasons it got shut down, at least from my standpoint, was the big upgrade was replacing the backup boiler at Alden. I think it was Alden. And I couldn't see any way that would save us money unless the primary boiler went out. It wasn't looking at efficiencies. So do you guys have the technologists to come in and say, when you look at Elm, there's this stream of steam that's pouring out of the building all the time. I mean, rerouting that, either upgrading that and getting rid of it. But do you guys also look at ways to not tie us into fuel oil and petroleum-based products for the next, because if we do this for 10 years, we're basically saying for the next 10 years, we're committing to fuel oil.
Right. That's exactly what I was alluding to in the previous slide, that when we prepare an RFP, there's a standard boilerplate scope items we want them to look at. And apology for the background noise. We have them look at the standard, lighting, temperature controls, things like that. But there's a specific section in the RFP that the language is the district specifically requests the following. And I would put right there in bold, minimize future fuel consumption through different HVAC technologies, like those heat pumps I was talking about. That could potentially be an alternative opportunity that kind of gets you on the way towards eliminating fuel oil in the future. I do remember those conversations very clearly, that I understand the community is very green-minded, and you can really structure these projects in that way to maximize greenhouse gas emissions, minimize greenhouse gas emissions, excuse me.
And the other thing to keep in mind is, we had this massive mold problem, and good or bad, however you want to figure it, it was at least partially based on humidity. Humidity in hours or in times when we're probably not heating. So, can we look at technologies that can help us avoid doing that again? Because you never know what the weather is going to be like over the summer.
Yeah, I would need a little more information on those. I know that's really been something, in conversations with Brian, that's been something that the district's been dealing with in recent years. I don't want to speak directly to that right now, just because I don't know the root cause or any analysis you guys did or anything like that, but I do remember having that conversation. And
my question's more, I want you guys to not just go into this and go, oh man, they got a lot of fluorescents, we can do LEDs, and then we can upgrade their boilers so it only uses 10,000 gallons versus 11,000 gallons. I want you guys to, again, personally, I want to see you guys open the aperture. What
Understood.
Could we do with solar? What could we do with geothermal? What could we do with heat? All those things, and give us a plan that's going to take us forward, reduce costs, but take us forward as well. And then all those carbon things, man, I love seeing those on displays in the hallway. We just remove, we just
Right.
stop the equivalent of 1,000 trees from being cut down.
Hmm.
But anyway.
Understood. Thank you.
I have some questions.
Sure.
Aldo. So there's NYSERDA exists, and there's a New York State Power Authority. I'm wondering how do those things relate to EPCs?
Sure. So NYSERDA has numerous programs that'll get drawn, that'll be brought into this project. One of them specifically that jumps out to me, they have a new program in there that's called a Real-Time Energy Monitoring Program, RTEM, I believe it's called, which is basically an incentive for companies after installing, or for clients after installing something like temperature controls. They actually pay out a rebate program for years 1, year 2, year 3, as that company proves to them that what they installed is actually producing or performing as designed, right? That's a perfect tie-in for an EPC project, because we're doing that anyway, right? Anything that's installed is going to be monitored over time. So NYSERDA, similar to that, NYSERDA, sorry, go ahead.
Brand new technology, or other people have done the same projects?
Say that again. You broke
Is
up
that
there.
brand new technology, or is that for a commonplace?
It's not necessarily new technology. It's a new program out there that they're offering to encourage these types of enhanced temperature controls to prevent the wasted heat. On the NYPA front, not so much involved here. If you were a NYPA customer further south throughout Westchester, their territories get a little funky. A lot of squiggly lines there, but NYPA does have, or did have in previous years, a similar EPC type program that they offered. It was really reserved mostly, from my understanding, for smaller one-off projects, like a lighting project only. They had strict requirements, and there were some administration fees in there too for financing and things like that. We did competitive analyses of that program, but from my understanding right now, I haven't crossed paths with that program in years. I'm not sure if it's even active.
Okay. My last question is about the 2020 Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act the state put into effect.
Right.
They wanted 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040 and net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And it seems like we're investing something that's going to last for 20, 30 years. And it just seems I'm questioning whether there's actually there's a strategy, or rather there's a bill, a law, but yet I don't know if there's anything behind it. Is there anything behind it for commercial buildings or education?
A lot of that stems, not specifically. I mean, for New York schools, regarding state education department, who we interact with on these projects, the facilities planning department, there is no specific guidelines or anything like that are laying out paths for school districts. But just by nature of those types of programs I mentioned before, like NYSERDA, with their ongoing monitoring practice, that is the result of these plans. They need to incentivize the industry to pay for these types of projects, right?
Yes.
And things like that. There are solar rebates that were replenished up in your area recently in the last 1 to 2 years. So that is, again, a result of it. Unfortunately, I think a lot of that flows with the state budget and, what type of monies those are. And I think that's a little bit on the back burner for now. But we see it all over the place in the industry. Your local utility, Central Hudson, they provide incentives and rebates for saving on electric, right? You guys don't have any gas at the district, but.
It seems to me that you're right. They're going to have to incentivize. And the penalty of doing something now is you don't get the incentives. You get some energy savings sooner, but you may be missing out on comprehensive incentives. that I would expect have to happen because you have a whole lot of communities that probably can't afford to do much of anything.
Right.
Now, whether they'll tie incentives to wealth, I don't know. Community wealth, I don't know how they'll do this.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's up in the air, but I'm just saying there is some logic to waiting.
Yeah, that's a common discussion. We talk about that all the time, but at the end of the day, at any point in history in the future, I imagine we'll be saying, oh, there's more rebates on the horizon. There's more new technology on the horizon. And I think there is an opportunity cost to not doing anything, right, at the same time.
I mean, we have our third generation of fluorescents, bulbs, LEDs now. I mean, I think we did something with Central Hudson.
On the exterior lighting.
They replaced everything, and then you guys came along. We replaced all that stuff, or a lot of it, and we're probably going to do it again. So it's like we're throwing out lights because it keeps on getting better, I suppose. But it's kind of just
but the T8 lights that were installed.
The waste from the stuff too, So
Mike Ragusa isn't on the call right now, right?
He is.
Yeah, I'm here.
Mike, but I imagine you're replacing those T8 lights not daily, but as they burn out.
Yeah, I just ordered 4 more cases. Yes.
Right.
The 2 projects that he's talking about, one was inside lights and one was outside. Nothing got replaced that was changed.
So what kind of time frame are we talking about? I mean, let's say we say, we shoot the thing off today and we say go. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Really for the first piece, which is tell us everything that we could do, even if it's ridiculous, and what it would cost and, what the payback is, so that we can start to look at, what do we want to jump on? I mean, some of the keys to what John was talking about is making this stuff, I'll say, modular. So if the solar panels go from 400 to 1,000, we can actually swap them out versus having to replace the entire system.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of time frame are we talking about to get this audit done?
So if you probably weren't around a few years ago, but we probably worked with the district for, Brian, what do you think, 6 months or so to get from a preliminary assessment, which is really, think of this as us framing out what the opportunity might look like, discussing what these opportunities are, whether it's, just to get some ballpark numbers, where can we put solar? What economics might that look like? Where are your roofs in good condition? Just trying to frame out so that everyone has an idea of what this project looks like before we take the more public step, which is requesting proposals from the energy services companies.
So that first step, how long do you think that takes?
I would say a month, maybe 2 months. We'd want to update your utility baseline, but we got to answer some questions too. We need to understand your roof conditions. We don't want to put solar somewhere where your roofs are old or in poor condition or needing replacement within the next 5 years. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So I would say 1 to 2 months is a very conservative, we could definitely have some answers on what the potential opportunity is for the district.
Okay.
After that, the RFP process and evaluating proposals, call that another 2 to 3 months. The investment grade comprehensive energy audit, call it another 2 months or so after that. Preparing the contract is fairly minimal because that's all done in parallel. And that's when you're actually executing the contract. So realistically, these 4 steps right here, easily the next 6 months of work for sure.
And you guys don't have, and I guess this is probably more for Brian and Laura. So can we get them in? I know we sort of say, no parents, no this, no that in the buildings. Can we, with all this COVID stuff going on, does that throw a wrench into this?
Oh, Laura, you're on mute.
Just as long as we're following the guidelines, wearing masks, social distance, hand hygiene, not coming to work when you're sick.
So you guys, have you been doing these in schools like during this whole last year?
Yep. Yeah, there was probably about 2 to 3 week period from mid-March to early to mid-April, where things were really hitting the fan. New executive orders out I don't need to tell you guys about it. We're on, we're mobilized, we're not on, we're on hold, we're back on. But really by, I'd say early May, the jobs were back rolling, doing work, second shift. In fact, it was actually a very productive summer construction window for a lot of our projects because there was no students in the buildings. But today, as school districts have more students in, whether they're cohorts or whatever it may be, it's all second shift. No one's coming in while the buildings are occupied. It's, we've been working pretty effectively and, learning we can do a lot more over Zoom like this than we previously thought.
And then after the second shift, you guys do the decontamination, or Mike, do you pull your guys back in to come in early and do it?
You're on mute, Mike.
Mike's on mute.
You mean if they worked a second shift, what would we do?
Right. I mean, you got to decontaminate the building after they leave.
Well, they won't be working in the whole building at once, right? It'll be
Right.
depending on what's going on. They'll be mostly, it depends if they're doing light bulbs. They're not going to do every classroom every night. They're going to do room after room. If they're doing unit vents or something, it'll be room after room. So it's not going to be that much. They're not going to be in 10 classes at a time, 10 classrooms at a time. So
Right.
we'd be able to keep up, I think.
Okay.
Aldo, could you go back to the previous slide just for a second? So in terms of identifying potential scope, so one of the things that we've already identified and this board has already talked about being important is obviously that is sustainability. So can you just speak to us a little bit about what we may be able to do in terms of increased cost, knowing that sustainability and the education around being a responsible citizen for our students, and knowing that there may be a premium about that, but we still may be able to get and capture some of those savings and get increasingly sustainable.
Yeah. A good example of that is solar, for instance. Your utility region, don't take this as fact until we get to do our preliminary analysis for sure, but solar still comes in. It's about a 16 or 17 year simple payback generally for school districts. In other words, the debt costs of buying that system may not be fully offset by the benefits of the system. Now, I have clients who said, that's okay with us. We know what the cost is to us, but there's other benefits besides the financial impact on our bottom line, right? We're seeing, I have some clients, when they have all good roofs, I have some clients that are offsetting 90% of their electric bill by generating on-site clean solar. In that conversation, they're looking at it and saying, that's a huge environmental benefit. It's, we're a public organization. We should be setting an example for our schools, for our students. We're okay with going a little bit of negative cash flow. And we can show you all that, what the opportunity might be. But really where the firm numbers come in is this RFP process. We can give you projections. We can give you what we think. But at the end of the day, these companies need to come in and compete and put their proposals together. And the industry changes very quickly with rebates and what rebates they think they can get in there for solar from NYSERDA or from Central Hudson. It's a very dynamic process. So that's kind of the work we want to do to roll up our sleeves and, you know, identify what this might look like for you all. Does that answer your question, Brian?
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to be able to understand from you the point about, well, listen, we may decide that there's a premium that we're willing to expend because we understand the importance of maybe even leading the way in sustainability in our area.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
The discussion of sustainability is difficult and we sort of just did it to ourselves because we switched to a renewable power supply or, you know, power source. So, you know, taking solar and saying it's you know, it gives us carbon benefits, that's kind of tough to do. But if you can then say, you know, solar is now heating and cooling the rooms versus, you know, just purely fuel oil, you know, blasting in, that's a, you know, a much better discussion of sustainability.
Right. Like the, again, going off the example of minimizing your boilers firing and doing supplemental heating with heat pumps.
Yeah.
Those run on electric. Your electric load will go up, except by installing solar, you're offsetting that further, right? So it's a very good point, definitely.
You still have to have your boiler around,
You do.
and the boilers
do.
still age.
What's that?
The boilers continue to age, just using them less. Maybe they'll go a little longer.
Right. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're, you know, looking at replacing them back then, you know, because without doing a major capital improvement project to completely renovate your HVAC system, I really don't see the EPC being a model to fully eliminate, you know, your fuel oil system, the boilers, all the steam piping. That's really not the model of this project because there are state constraints on how large it can be and, you know, the cost versus the savings, all those different things. So.
Yeah, plus the northern winters here, you know, it gets cold.
Right. You can't leave that.
Split's not going to handle that.
What's that? Splits
aren't going to handle that kind of dip in temperature. You know,
right. They'll be doing shoulder season period really just to avoid your, you know, that boiler firing unnecessarily.
Right.
Couple value added services. Really the one I want to touch on, being conscious of all your time, is our student engagement program. This we really didn't put as much emphasis on this in years past. You know, specifically with your project, I don't remember it being a major topic of discussion. The last year or two, ECG's, you know, made a huge commitment to engaging students on these projects. That includes students and the teaching staff. You know, like, you know, your Board of Education goals, there's, you know, you want to foster a community, you know, green-minded students growing up. We do that in a few different ways. First, we ask each ESCO during the RFP to submit a site-specific plan, customized plan, exactly what they're going to do for the district for all of our evaluation and consideration in the selection process. But from ECG's perspective, we're constantly coming in as professionals, presenting to STEM groups, STEM clubs, science groups. Some of the proposals we've seen from ESCOs too, things like bringing your staff to a national energy teachers conference. You know, they sponsor the trip, travel, hotel, food, everything like that, to basically spur this engagement. You know, the ESCOs joke that it's somewhat self-serving because they want to be looking to hiring more students in the future, you know, with this type of background for these type of projects. So it's a huge part of these programs, and, you know, it doesn't get talked about enough, you know, when we sit here and we talk about the BTUs and the costs and the savings. You know, this is a very real project, a good opportunity to engage students.
I think that's a great idea. to get the students involved in it.
Yep.
You know, this is their future. So what you're doing is really up to them. But
Yeah.
bravo to you guys for doing that.
Yeah, we follow the district's lead as much as you'd like. I mean, we've had customers invite some students to sit in on a project meeting where we're going through what are the opportunities, what does the cost and savings look like. We've done field trips, you know, maybe into the boiler room to see how the boiler is changing. You know, not so much on the roofs. That's a little bit of a liability issue, but you know, we have a retired superintendent who works for us, who's responsible for, you know, delivering this and, you know, taking the lead on it.
Suppose some of our STEM, like, you know, if a STEM club comes up with an idea of, I don't know, you know, getting the broadcast booth off the grid. Can you guys provide, you know, guidance and expertise, you know, hey, I would put this on the top, you know,
For sure.
I mean, some of it doesn't really, it'd be kind of cool to let them play with driven or solar driven, or even, well, we would drill wells, but.
Right. No, but absolutely. I mean, one company in particular, they have what they call the solar van that they give to each of their clients. That it's basically a van with solar panels on it, and they're all positioned in different orientations to the sun. You know, and the van can be moved, obviously. So curriculum tie-ins like that, you know, you can show, you know, the impact of south facing, north facing at given times of day and weather, and you can really get creative with it. For sure.
Assuming we can figure something out that is really, you know, energy efficient, but also, you know, creates a good sustainability story. You know, it would be fantastic. Part of the challenge is gonna, now back to Caroline and your team, is figuring out how to wrap the you know, assuming we get back to normal or something like normal, wrap the curriculum around doing these things. But as an example, I don't know why BOCES isn't doing more of this type of stuff.
I will say it's been a little challenging, you know, engaging teachers and stuff like that right now during this time. It's obviously a lot more on their plate than usual. But hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. So just wrapping up here, and, you know, next steps, like I said, authorization, really just the word go. And, you know, we'll work with the district staff to, you know, develop what we think could potentially be the project, what the scope options might be. And I understand you're going through you're initiating a long-term planning process. This planning of the EPC should really go hand in hand with that. And we do that with a lot of districts in these early phases. And like I said, as we come to kind of a conclusion on what we think the opportunity is and what the goals are, you know, well-defined, we'd really want to move forward with the RFP process to really make this public and say, yes, the district is serious about this project and this is what we want to achieve, and, you know, give us your best proposal. We evaluate those, we help you select who you want to work with. And, you know, we do various presentations to the Board of Ed throughout that process, you know, sharing the results, things like that. So, you know, with that, I just want to thank you again for having us, having me. Any other questions I'd be happy to answer?
Yeah, I'll shoot with the long-term planning. So our district had not gone very far in the past couple of years on long-term planning at all. And I'd like to understand what's the drawbacks if you do not have the long-term planning, if you're behind on that, and as far as your.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the things, you know, you were alluding to previously. You don't want to put good money after bad, essentially, right? You have a major plan at Alden Elementary School to really do a full HVAC renovation there and get rid of that steam system once and for all, put in, you know, a hot water system and maybe some ducts, a ducted system with rooftop units, things like that. The EPC, I'll tell you right now, isn't going to be able to fund that. I'd be very surprised. And that's because you only spend so much in savings, right? We still need to heat the buildings, still need to light the buildings. Things like that is a perfect example where the district could almost have their hands tied and not know where to go with the EPC if you were planning that in all the buildings, you know, or if you were planning on massive renovations to the high school, for instance. The high school's fairly new, so, you know, that's a bad example, but these types of things, when you don't know the future of what you're planning for that space, that can tie up the decision-making process. And that's really what we want to talk through before taking that more public RFP step. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And another example would actually be our roof here at the middle school. So we would do and want to do a roof replacement here in order to be able to effectuate a large amount of the installation of solar panels here. So we would first do a roof project, and then we would seek to be able to get the solar panels here. And the roof project would be a capital project as opposed to an EPC.
That's a perfect example, Brian, you know, because that's one of the biggest constraints, right? Everyone wants to do solar, but you're not putting it on a 20-year-old roof. I wouldn't recommend it, and the state wouldn't allow it anyway. So.
And you guys will look at the entire grounds too, right? You know,
for ground mounted arrays.
Yeah. Yeah,
I will say we did a ground mounted array up at Pine Plains School District, actually, right near you guys. If you're familiar with this Dissing Mountain High School, middle school there, it's actually on the right side of the front lawn when you go in. They had a ton of space up there, and the district and the board really wanted to, you know, make a statement and do a project like that. We did talk about some, you know, at a very high level about different areas. It can be challenging depending on the size of the space and, you know, the economies of scale and where you're tying that into the building and things like that, right? That can all impact the economics pretty significantly.
Okay. Anybody else? So Brian, are we looking for, you know, go, or are we going to have further discussion? What's your hope or thoughts on that?
Yeah, just board discussion around it, understanding the process, having, if there are any questions about the process, just to kind of level set everybody's understanding about what an energy performance contract is. That was the value of the discussion. And then just in terms of moving forward, whatever the board's pleasure is in terms of starting to develop a scope or not, thinking together about more of the sustainability. I don't know if there's any philosophical discussion that you want to have around less savings, more sustainability. If there's marching orders for Aldo in terms of really what that scope should really look like.
Yep. Okay. So is anybody, I'm personally, I'd rather sort of get ourselves as a board, you know, consistent and say, you know, if we want to focus on sustainability, if we want to focus on, you know, getting rid of some of this, just, I don't know if the things changed. I haven't seen the report in a while, but, you know, looking at those old reports of the amount of fuel oil that's burned at Elm, just, you know, it pains me. So unless anybody on the board, you know, if you guys want to move forward and either yes or no right now, or if you want to take some time to think about it, what's the thought? I mean, I'm assuming that we'll actually get like that first phase, that, you know, kind of high level scope. that's something the board would see before going any further, right?
For sure. Yeah, I don't want you to, we're happy to do this type of study for you and kind of frame out what this project is, have meetings and answer your questions. We want you, especially considering previous, 5 years ago, the ESCOs have very long memories, and I can guarantee they monitored what happened with that project and saw it never move forward. So we're really going to want to be able to assure them that, we've gone through this. This is a very good idea of the scope. The board is on board with it.
Yeah.
That'll go a long way to getting a strong response in that RFP process. So
does
you guys are, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, does anybody on the board have, I mean, I hope you all agree that we need to do something to just get ourselves under control from an energy standpoint. Whether we, focus on sustainability or not, I think it'd be a huge mistake not to, but that's my opinion. But does anybody have an issue with us telling these guys to move forward with the audit part, that first step?
I'm a little uncomfortable because we haven't done any long-range planning. I think we need to do long-range planning. We need to consider a needs list. We need to look at security, and we need to integrate everything together. We know what we want to do, big time, and then we snap fit what we need into that. That's the logical way. If you want to feel good and do a project, I get that, but it may not be the best way to do things.
No, I don't even know what's possible. That's my problem with what's going, where the district is now is, can you actually do anything with Elm? Can we actually do anything with the middle school? We with the condition of the buildings, with the condition of the heating systems, is there anything we can do? And is it even feasible before we, because I think you're right, John. I mean, we need to really understand, what else do we need to do with security? What else do we need to do from an overall, there was some discussion last year about changing traffic patterns. But the energy portion, I don't even know what could be done.
It's just an energy performance contract could snap fit into a capital project too. They can go hand in hand.
Right.
So unless we have to have it so badly that we want to consider some things that wouldn't be a snap fit. I don't know.
Well, the audit part isn't really that's just hey, you're spending $18 million on fuel oil. I think we could cut it to 9 or 8, right? It doesn't lock us into a capital project or not a capital project.
No, first and foremost, it's a baseline study, right? So we're looking at your buildings again. We'd want to update the baseline from 5 years ago, understand what you're spending today, how those buildings are performing. That's really the foundation of it, because again, we're limited by what we can actually save on your bill, right?
Yep.
In terms of scope opportunities, that becomes a little bit more difficult because of everything John's, referring to, and that you may want to do a massive HVAC renovation at one of the elementary schools, if that's the priority, or if we simply know that's going to be a priority going forward, we can direct the scope to avoid that building. We should just go in with eyes wide open before an RFP is developed. And that's really what this is about. This preliminary scope identification is about, because, your district, if you lose a building in lighting, right, that's a huge chunk of savings that the project won't have. And it could, damage the opportunity for the EPC. So all these things, there is definitely a planning process that we should talk about here.
And just to share, just to make sure everybody knows, for those of you who weren't on the board back then, in 2012, that big project where we built the fields, we did a $9.9 million project, and that included the fields. It included a roof at Elm, a roof at Alden, and we also upgraded the entirety of the heating systems at Alden and the middle school. So at the time, the board decided that we were going to do a hot water upgrade here at the middle school, and that's what we did. And we also, it was decided, did a steam. We stuck with steam at Alden Place, and there was a complete upgrade there as well. I want to say maybe one was 1.3. You know what? I don't want to give numbers because they're going to be faulty. I'm going to forget them. But we did the entirety of systems, and Elm Drive was the only building it went now. And so every time Perry says Elm Drive is spewing oil, well, not spewing oil, but we're sinking lots of oil in Elm Drive. It's absolutely true. We don't have controls there, and we never had an upgrade there. So that is the building that's the least efficient. But so just in terms of background, that's what we've done in recent years.
Any other thoughts from board members? I mean, I think we need to get the subcommittees in and do something to corral all that stuff. I think we really need to even look at our long-term financial plan and see where that where that puts us in the next 5 years.
So I'll be happy to share that document again about when our debt falls off and when we want to be able to have a capital project done by, to make sure that our taxpayers don't suffer from spikes. So when that debt falls off, we have another bond to make sure that we take care of our facilities and we don't have those fluctuations.
That's a good point, Brian.
Yeah, so I can share that document again.
I just think we need to have somebody, a focal point, if you will, for the facilities committee, the safety and security committee, the finance, for the financial plan, all of it to bring that together and figure out is it worth doing a capital plan, or should we really just focus on smaller chunks now and then look to do a capital plan a capital project 5 years from now, or now I don't know whether the subcommittees have been meeting since with all this COVID stuff, but I think we need to get all those pointed to. I don't know who the right person or subcommittee or whatever it would be. Any thoughts from board members?
Yeah, I mean, the facilities group, and its facilities group could bring in, whoever, could bring in others when needed.
But does the facilities committee have the financial, I mean, the biggest part of this is trying to figure out, all right, facilities says we need to do these 10 things. Safety and security says we need to do these 10 things. Maybe 5 of them cross. There would be an energy contract, an energy whatever to do these things. And so, there's got to be a finance person that says, well, the best thing to do is wait till year 4 because this falls off and you can do this, and the performance contract would fit in with a capital project. I mean, if the facilities subcommittee is cool doing that, but we need to get this done. I mean, this can't be, a year of discussions on what's needed in I mean, this and we're scheduling the subcommittees to come in and present to us, but this has got to be something that becomes a priority.
I look to your chairpersons for what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Perry, I agree with you. I think we all have to put what we think, put it out there, and then we have to fall back on the group, the ECG group, to come through and talk about finances, and then we need to work from there. I mean, that's the only way we can do this. Things have to be prioritized. I 100% agree with you.
I mean, selecting an architect is going to be a big deal too, because they're going to be, they're key.
All right. I guess what we'll do is we'll take this offline, figure out, if it's the facilities committee is going to lead all this effort. We just need to make sure somebody on the facilities committee commits to owning it, or somebody's. I don't know if did we do a building condition survey, or that got pushed out or something, right, Brian?
Yeah, you're right. That's where they shuffled everything around, and they said that Millbrook is 2023 for our building condition survey. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't be able to do our own and just pay for it and not get the aid once we get our architect online. That would be fine. We just have to know that it wouldn't be aidable.
Yeah, I just don't want to see this. Well, we can't really do a building condition survey till 2023. And then we have to at that point, we'll have to bring in the safety and security stuff and the facility stuff. We should be able to get that done by the end of 2025. Then we'll get these guys in, and next thing you know, it's 2030, and we still haven't. We've spent 7 years or 9 years, as you said, spewing fuel from Elm.
Well, Perry, you make a good point. I understand and agree with what John's saying. It does all have to fit in, but now we're going to take another couple seasons or whatever it takes to see the continuing waste of fuel, et cetera. And I don't know why we can't start the process, to be honest with you, and take a look and see, and at least do the assessment piece and get that going. Because we're going to be sitting here again a year from now talking about the same stuff. Everything else should happen then simultaneously if we're going to tie it into it eventually. But to do just an assessment on saving some money on lighting and heating and maybe making some small improvements here and there. I don't know. I've been part of these studies before in Greenberg Graham, in Wappingers, in the districts I've worked in, and we've saved thousands and thousands of dollars over a year. So I think that, to keep putting it off, I understand John's point. I understand Claudia, and everything does have to eventually tie together. We're going to make it a capital project, but just to start a process and get going of an analysis of all the buildings, by the time they do that, where will we be? What's that timeline? That's what I want to ask. Just an analysis of where we are and what small improvements we may want to look at to start.
I would say about 1 to 2 months we'll be in a position to talk about what your savings opportunity is, for sure, based on
and then we could look at cost. Then we could look at cost of what equipment or materials we're talking about. Are we talking about a whole new system here? Are we talking about vents here? Are we talking about windows here? Are we talking about different lighting, or what is it? I mean, some of it might be able to say, hey, it doesn't take as much as maybe we think for a proposition or something. I don't know. I just think keep putting it off is wrong.
Paul, you make a good point, and I'm thinking, is there a way that you guys, when you're doing this initial audit, do you go through and say, look, this is something we should do under an EPC. This is something that really needs to be part of a capital project, but it's a worthwhile capital project because you save this and this and this. Sort of breaking it down into items, because then we could easily take the building conditions / facilities input and the safety and security input and say, well, if we're going to go forward with a capital project, these 4 things that are part of the building condition survey don't need to be done now. We could do them, 3 years from now, when a capital project makes sense, is that something that you guys could,
For sure.
provide us?
Part of this philosophy, when you're looking at an EPC, there was a time where everyone was doing capital projects. Every district we were working with the last few years is really looking at planning bonds or going out for propositions, whatever it may be. And a lot of the goals of those projects were, let's keep this clean and simple so that there's no reliance on the capital project and the EPC project. And we can work through that, very, very efficiently over the next couple months.
But identifying those items, even though they probably won't be in an EPC, identifying those items that really should be like, the middle school, the windows suck. Replace all the windows in the middle school, replace all the doors. And I'm making this up, so don't start tomorrow.
Right.
But,
taking notes.
If we're talking about like gutting the middle school, it makes sense, or maybe it doesn't, but it makes sense, but it's really a capital project. That's not something and like you said, Elm, the best thing for Elm would be to gut that entire heating system. We could do these things that would get you, that wouldn't be throwaway waste. And then a capital project should absorb that. And that would take your budget would go from, I don't know, or you're not your budget, but your usage would go from 10,000 gallons to 5,000 gallons after the EPC project, and then it would go to 1,000 gallons after a capital project. Because then it also provides us long-term. At this point, we can't afford, like right now, the biggest problem we have is we don't even know, from day to day, are we getting aid? Are we not getting aid? We've had to spend money that we really didn't want to because just, putting extra staff. So does that make sense to you guys? And I'm asking the board, to have these guys move forward with basically an entire energy audit of the district, where you could save, what you could save, how you would do it, and an estimate of, geez, this is 10 million. There's no way you could do it in a EPC. You should do it in a capital project. And then working through the facilities committee as input to these guys and see if there's other things that should be tacked on the capital projects, and same with safety and security. Does that make sense to you guys, or do you want to just think through it?
I think it makes sense. If you have the facilities committee, set the priorities. How do they know what the priorities are? How do they know what needs to be done first? So I think you really need to have some input on that. So if they're able to break it down and say, this is what we can do, this is what you would need to do, and this is the cost savings, and this is how much it would, I think that would help put things in perspective for everyone.
Chris, we've been through this a number of times. You basically get an architect to do an audit of all your facilities. They rate these things. They say how many years of life they expect out of them. Some have to be replaced, very soon. And you kind of come up with a set of priorities. You look at all the different things. You try to figure out, how do I put what things can go together at what locations, and you kind of start coming up with some sort of over long-term plan of how you want to attack the things that are sorely needed, or that you just like to have, and you start looking, and that's the way I see things done. We probably last time we did this was 10 years ago, 2010, because we finished a project in 2013. I pitched the board at the time. I said I want to do a small project every 2 years, and I'll tell you something from experience. What happens is energy. So energy, meaning human energy, is that people, you start ramping up, you start going through the building, and that's a draining process, the construction and seeing the project through. And then human nature is also to sit back and enjoy it a little bit for another 2 to 3 years. And then, so it really needs to be kind of an evolving cycle, just sort of like a policy thing. We just keep on going on, trying to plan on what's next and not letting it slip 10 years. you know? So we sorely need to do something. We have a pot of money put aside, as we know. And it's time to start moving on that. If you want to move at the same time doing this, that's fine, but we got to move on a long-term project.
Okay. So can we get, I mean, what I don't want you guys to do is, you know, this just, I don't know, this just affects the EPC. I mean, if we can get, you know, and it's going to take work from the board as well. I mean, we've got to be engaged in, you know, ongoing discussion. Here's what the EPC guys have found. This is, you know, and I don't know who the facilities guys have, the facilities committee has reviewed this stuff, and we feel like we should put, you know, prioritize this. But, you know, the ramp over at the high school is cracking. We got to get that in, you know, so, and then divide it up into, here's the energy stuff we need to do right now. Here's the I'll call them capital projects we need to do right now, the major stuff, and then, you know, go from there. Now, once we get this audit, is there time for us to pause and basically filter this into, and hopefully with your help, filter this into a long-term plan?
For sure. That's really what it's all about. That's what I'm looking to do.
Yeah, I mean,
Talk to you about the opportunities, make sure we're all on the same page, and make sure it's aligned with the long-term goals of the district before we take any sort of public steps with an EPC.
Okay.
I just cautioned about, you know, doing the far-fetched stuff, like putting in a solar farm would be great. I mean, but the thing is, you could say, let's do this forward-looking thing, and we'll spend $5 million on that. And then we look around for the rest of the long-term plans like, wow, we need some more money to be completing other things. So, you know, you want to be looking at things overall, what's important, you know, and if you can do the things you'd like to do, that's great, but you can't neglect other things because you want to race forward on something.
But, you know, you know, if we can get, like you said, John, if we can get a long-term plan that says, hey, here's, you know, if you guys just suddenly find some money laying around, this would be great to do a solar farm. And, you know, who knows, we might, you know, maybe 2 years from now, Central Hudson comes up and goes, hey, if there's anybody that's got a half an acre of land that's willing to do this, we'll pay for it. Boom. Hey, we got the plan already together. And then you're right. I mean, that also hopefully in our plan says, by the way, you got to make sure that you keep cutting trees and you keep washing the solar panels and you keep doing all this other stuff. Otherwise they go to hell. But I think we've got to, I like your point, Paul. And I think, you know, we really need to get this stuff done, then fold this in with the facility stuff, but quickly. I mean, you know, not let's go spend another year looking at facilities or talking about, I don't know, new guard towers or something. You know, I think we need to get a plan moving. And one of the things I think Chris, Claudia, Jen, you guys are on the facilities committee, I think.
Yes.
So, I mean, one of the things to ask you guys to do is really think about, you know, how you would bring forward what facilities has identified so that once we get this EPC audit back, we can sit down, Brian, the facilities committee, safety, security, you know, Mike, whoever, and figure out, is this year 1? Is this year 2? Is this year 3? And then start looking at, you know, and then bring it back to the board like quickly, that this is what we need. And when I say quickly, I mean, do it right, not, you know, wing it in the next 10 minutes while you're supposed to be listening. All right.
Yep.
So does anybody have a problem if we go down that path? I mean, we're not going to spend any money. We're not going to, you know, do anything yet, but we need to get something moving. You guys good?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm not against having an architect look at the buildings, like John has said as well. I mean, architect's going to tell you how to spend money, and hopefully they're going to tell us how to save money, and that might put us in more alignment. Who knows?
To be honest with you, Chris, that's one of the things I always. Now, my son and my daughter-in-law are both architects, but they don't look at. Well, my son does, but they don't really look at, like they don't keep up with geothermal and stuff that the new technology that keeps coming out. They're more about building structure, the envelope, all that stuff. So I'm assuming when we say architect, we're talking about a whole team of people that are experts in heating and solar and geothermal and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, well, and that's part of the architect RFP process, and we're going to be in a position, to John's point and Chris's point, we're going to have to be selecting an architect to handle the next building condition survey and our next our 5-year capital plan, and that is the starting point. So we're going to have to board may want to have interviews and select an architect based on the RFP. So and that will absolutely start everything, and that's what we're ripe for. We have almost $6 million saved in order to be able to start something. So we're right where we want to be. And we have to get an architect on board, whether you choose to stay with the architects that you currently have or switch as a result of the RFP process, and maybe we want to look at an architectural firm that specializes in and has a lot of LEED certified architects, and that would be the next step for sure. So, and whenever that facilities subcommittee meets, I'm happy to help prep for it, meet whenever you're ready to, and get this going.
All right, so why don't we kick it off then, and let's get as many sources of information as we can to make a final decision of, we're going to move forward with a capital plan. That probably won't start till 2022, but we can start with this other stuff and they fit nicely together. But the first step from this piece is really to get that audit done.
Yeah, and just to say it, there's two things very quickly that I'll say. One is you may actually be in a position of wanting to ask the voters to increase the capital reserve over 6 million at the next referendum, because we're getting close to that limit. Maybe you want to actually even start a different type of reserve for technological infrastructure. You may be able to do that as well. So that's a discussion point that you may want to have. And there's one other point.
Why is it, Brian, that Elliot always gets a little input on spending money?
Because everything is in his arena. If it's got a plug, it's his. If it's software, it's his. So he's got to spend a lot of money.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. All right. So from ECG, let's get a move on. I think, Brian, maybe at the next meeting we need to hear about architectural, and maybe ECG can help. Architectural, is our current architect skilled at that aspect, or should we be looking at in a different direction? Facilities committee, we really need you to look at getting that list together, but also, if we choose this architect or get an architect on board, I think we've got to get a building condition survey. I don't know how much that is, but I think that's one of the things you need to bring back to us again. I know, Brian, we've asked for it and gotten it a couple times, but let's, because I think having somebody go through and not just point out the stuff that annoys me or annoys John or whoever, but actually goes through and says, you know what, this has to be done. This needs to be done. If we're going to do this long-term plan, we need that. Versus,
Yeah, and just to be clear, Perry, so you're right, you have received the building condition survey, but that's the old one.
Yeah.
So you've gotten it updated for you based on, listen, we've probably done about $1 million of capital work over the past 5-6 years in our $100,000 and $150,000, $175,000 projects. So that's great work that's been done. But I think you would say, and certainly I've heard, that's in the those are short-term projects in the absence of an overall plan. And it's great things that were on the building condition survey that needed to be picked off, and they were, and that's great. But what we really need is an updated building condition survey. And when we get an architect on board, what happens is they'll meet with us as educational leaders. They'll meet with principals and with Caroline and with Laura and be in a position where they talk about, all right, well, what does education look like in the next 10 years? And what do you need? And do we need large group instruction? And we're really visioning how we want to build out our education. And that's how the building condition survey is created. They work with Mike and with Elliot and have conversations, and they'll build a whole big document. It's a process. And then they'll run by and prioritize, to John's point in terms of process. They'll start putting numbers and priorities to everything that the board may want to do for the next generation of students. And that becomes the building condition survey and the 5-year plan. So amongst the next steps, whenever Claudia feels comfortable in convening the facilities committee, amongst the next steps would be thinking about that RFP process and thinking about getting an architect on board and maybe even running interviews through the subcommittee, and then maybe with the board in its entirety.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to make sure that this is that's why I really like the idea of having, a professional come through. I don't want this to be, the stuff the board pointed out when we did our walkthrough, or the stuff that's obvious to, this has got to be, hey, your foundation's crumbling over here and you need to do something. Or your roof is good, but 3 years from now, it's going to need to be replaced. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we need in a long term. Then we can fit in these good things, not good, you know what I mean? Like these other things that we want to do. But till we get that whole picture together, including what are our opportunities to reduce our energy consumption, our carbon footprint, all those things, and then meld it together into a long-term plan.
Great.
So can you, or since I picked on him earlier, Elliot put together a project plan that says, how we're going to bring the facilities committee. I mean, you're going to have to get the inputs from these things, but the technology stuff, how we're going to get this, when we bring together the EPC, we need to get I don't mean like a risk analysis and all that stuff, project plan, but just a timeline. We need the facilities committee to do this by here, and I point to Elliot, but Brian, this is really, your.
Yeah, I'll work with Claudia on that.
Okay. All right. Very good. That was a very good discussion, though. I appreciate you guys coming in and doing that.
Great.
You do it. Any other questions?
What happened here?
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for having me.
Thank you. See you
Appreciate
soon.
it. Bye.
All right. What is this? We already did that. Attendance. Laura, we're in public session, so as I guess generic as possible, can you take us through this is by the way for board members, this, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, this article came out about students just, disappearing, losing track, not us, but happening in other school districts. So Laura's going to give us an overview of the policy and how we're doing it. How we're doing, I should say.
Yes. So Elliot, can you cue us up? And I'm really going to take you through sort of the factors that are impacting us this year, the things that we do to support families and students, attendance reports and chronic absenteeism, and then sort of moving forward.
Okay.
So let me get myself situated here. So first of all, I want to say, as a new leader of this district, I like these kinds of requests from the board because I'm learning so much. There's so much to learn when you join a new school community, from curriculum and instruction, facilities, security, food service, and then down to the granular pieces such as attendance, which is just as important because it impacts student learning, and that's why we're here. So I just want to say that I appreciate these types of requests, and also that I had to dive into regulation. I had to dive into policy. I spoke with the principals and Caroline and Brian and Elliot, just to sort of get a feeling of this community and what we do for our families. So I wanted to share that as well. So this first slide is, we continue to be challenged by unknowns, new rules, and ever-changing circumstances, including the shared responsibility on the part of families and our district to provide an educational environment that is conducive to learning regardless of a student's location. So we know students are remote, they're in person, they're fully remote, they're hybrid, and there's a lot of balancing that we're doing and a lot of partnerships we need to foster with parents to ensure that they're receiving the quality education that they deserve no matter where they are. And we know there are a lot of barriers and challenges to this. Existing factors that have been pre-pandemic and will be post-pandemic continue to be student progress, engagement, equity, and social emotional well-being. Now this is compounded with challenges of the pandemic. We have economic factors, we have food insecurity, we have childcare issues, isolation, sickness, depression, fear, increase in responsibilities, and all of these affect a student's ability to learn and has the potential to impact attendance. This makes our mandate to support students and their families to engage in the school community this year all the more critical. Next slide, Elliot. So I sort of created buckets around this, the support that we provide our families and students with. And the buckets are contact, connectivity, relationships, participation, and then our response to chronic absenteeism. And then I'll go into some statistics that we gathered. So contact is super important, and we do it all of the time in so many ways, in big ways and small ways that impact student learning, student engagement, and their connectedness to us. So we want to make sure that we're ongoing contact with students and families. This impacts attendance in so many other areas of a student's education. We monitor daily absences. Families receive a robocall if a student is absent, if their child's not here. When we have monitored and identified excessive absences, there's a progressive response that may include letters home, family-student meetings with the guidance counselors, school psychologists, dean of students, principals, and maybe some local agencies outside of our walls. We also use social media platforms to show students that they matter. They're important and they're valued. We celebrate birthdays, we celebrate student work, we celebrate accomplishments. This makes them feel like they are part of a community. They are truly important. And then we continue to keep families informed using newsletters and the website, alerts, bulletins, and we make sure that we translate them. Right now we translate in Spanish. We also share with families ways to create, oh, you're too fast for me, Elliot. Sharing with families ways to create a productive and positive learning environment for students. So recently we've created a sort of a tips for parents to help support their child at home, and we'll be sending that out this week. So that's just one example. Then there's that connectivity piece. We ensure all students can participate in remote hybrid learning. No matter where they are, they should be able to participate in their education. So we've provided hotspots for students. We've distributed devices for both students and staff. So no matter where they are, they can tune in. We've also provided staff training by our instructional technology specialists in the use of technology and developing engaging lessons for learning models, the hybrid, the remote. Okay, Elliot. Then we have relationships. Relationships are everything. Relationships foster, we want to foster strong reciprocal relationships with caring adults and educators, essential for keeping students and families involved in school and learning. One way we've done that is we've surveyed students and families about how they feel about their learning experience, important feedback that informs decision-making. It's important for people to know that their voices are heard and what they're saying is being considered when we're making decisions moving forward. Teachers, they use relationship building strategies such as welcoming students back from absences. So they've been gone a few days, they come back into the hangout or in person, and we're just happy to see them back. No matter how long they've been away, we're happy to see their faces. We encourage connections among students in virtual classrooms, using group assignments and online chats to keep students engaged with each other, using breakout times and office hours to check in with individual students, connecting with parents on an ongoing basis with commendations and concerns. Due to various reasons, there are a few families across our schools that require more individualized intervention supports. So we go beyond our walls and we include local agencies such as the Dutchess County Social Work, ASTER, Dutchess County Division of Youth Services, and others to become part of this discussion in ways that we can support families and students that they can come back into school and maintain an attendance where learning can continue. Then there's participation. We're just making sure that our kids are present. Ongoing monitor of interaction and participation. We're monitoring, documenting student responses to questions in the chat, attending breakout sessions, completing and submitting their assignments. We know they're out there. We want to make sure that they're engaged, they're learning, and they're interacting with one another. And just in our expectations for students, they're expected to be present during the interactive portion of every lesson before we do the gradual release. And they're expected to follow the schedule for the day, staying connected with their teachers. Then we have this piece, the chronic absenteeism. And this is defined as missing 10% or more of enrolled school days. When Perry spoke about the article that was in Onboard, it's a NYSSBA newspaper, and they spoke about students who were falling through the cracks. That was the concern that came from the board of like, do we know if students are falling in the cracks and who are, or do we have our fingers on the pulse? And as true Millbrook spirit, we know these students. I'll show the stats later. And we're working closely with them and families to find ways to improve attendance. Our principals, Caroline, are engaged in these conversations and making sure that even at 1 day absent, 2 days absent, 3 days absent, 10, 20 days absent, they have their finger on the pulse of where our students are and the supports that they need. And if they don't know what the supports they need, they're working closely with their families to figure out what a plan of action is to improve attendance here in school. Because we know that a certain amounts of days that are missed will impact their education long-term. So it's super important that our students are here with us or remotely and hanging out with us. And so we're providing parents and caregivers also with resources and options and developing a plan of action together and holding each other accountable for doing their part. It's a true parent and school partnership. It always has been that way pre-pandemic, and again, it will be post-pandemic, but it's extremely important now that we're having these conversations and saying, well, I will use that resource or that local agency, and here at school, we will do this for you, and we will support your child in this way.
Hey, Laura, I mean, I don't even know if the tools are capable, but do we have any automated, John, I know John will remember when we would get on and do education, especially specific sort of personnel stuff. Every once in a while, if you didn't click on something, it would come up and say, hey, you still there? And if you didn't click on it, basically it marked it down and then put you back. Well, for us, it put us back at the beginning. Does our software have any, or are we just relying on the teachers going, hey, I don't see Joey anymore?
I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that.
I think, are you asking if they get automatically timed out if they're not like active?
Yeah, yes, or if they're just, you know, if they've clicked on, you know, their icon is up, but I know most of the teachers say, you know, turn your camera back on, but I've also heard some schools don't even use cameras, and I'm wondering if we don't force cameras, then, you know, is there some way for us to not just the teacher constantly monitoring who's on board, who's online, and who's not?
Well, are the teachers taking attendance at the beginning of the session and at the end of the test, end of the period? You know, are they doing spot checks in between?
Yeah. And go ahead, Elliot. Do you want to?
I was just going to speak to the technical side of the question. So we don't time kids out. We want to keep them engaged as much as possible, but we do offer different methods of engagement in terms of the software that we do use, both built into Google Classroom, but also that we have add-on features as well that are really engagement tools that allow the teacher to have interactive discussions with the student, as well as monitor their activity within and beyond the Google Classroom environment. And we're also, from an administrative perspective, we're able to see, you know, just how engaged the children are. Are they participating in chats? Are they turning their microphones on, their cameras on? We've had discussions where, very similar to in-person instruction, a child can be sitting there staring at the front of the room and be completely disconnected and disengaged, right? So sometimes having the camera on, you can see my face, but am I paying attention? Am I dialed in? Am I engaged? You know, those are all other questions. So we definitely, when we came into this hybrid and remote learning, we wanted to make sure that we provided some solutions that would allow those teachers to connect with their kids virtually over distance in a number of different ways, not just whether or not they could see their faces. And I think we've been having some pretty good success with that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say, Laura and the whole team, Brian, Caroline, Eric, you know, all the principals, I mean, all you guys, and Elliot, you know, this is about caring. I mean, we're seeing more and more really, usually even outstanding students who are going through a lot with just the issues of the stress and anxiety, whether it's, you know, new 504 requests or whatever it might be. But the caring component here and the social emotional learning is phenomenal. And the relationships piece, Laura, that you mentioned is unbelievable. Because I bet you every kid already has an adult in Millbrook that they know they can go to. I know I have mine for my daughter. And I know every family probably feels the same way, because that's the environment and that's what you guys have created. And I'm telling you, for this year, you've gone way above and beyond with every little touch, from food deliveries to people, you know, feeling good about things on every level. Board members, kids, everyone. I think this is a phenomenal attendance plan, and to get kids re-engaged, if we're missing that percentage that is missing 10% of the time, you know, I just think this is awesome. So to all of you, I applaud you. And these are things that are in place, because when you talk to people and you hear what's going on, this is exactly what's going on. This is not just slides with bullets. This is reality for our kids and our family. And you guys delivering every day. I have to say, it is really incredible. So thank you all. I really mean that. It's unbelievable.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. All right, so the last piece is the chronic absenteeism, and that is defined as missing 10%. Oh, did I say that already? I've done that already. We're on the next slide. So here is broad strokes of attendance by school. We have 836 students enrolled. I have 172 students in Elm, 171 in Alden, 210 in middle school, and 283 in high school. Attendance rate for Elm is 97.14, Alden is 96.9, middle school is 97.2, high school is 94.5. So overall, our district's attendance is 96.19%.
Do we know what our attendance was, you know, say the same time period in 2019? I was just curious if this is a, you know, 97.14 1.4, is that a good number, or is that sort of on par with what we normally, what we used to see in normal world?
Elm Drive for the 1920 school year was 96.56.
Okay.
And for the 18-19 school year was actually 94.02.
Really?
That was for Elm.
Okay.
Alden, 18-19 was 94.78 and 96.95 for 1920. For the middle school, 18-19 was 93.41 and for 1920 was 96.87. For the high school, 18-19 was 94.29 and 1920 was 95.64.
Yeah, I wonder if it's, people are actually in total healthier, given they're not getting colds and, because they're not going anywhere near somebody that might have a cold. But I'll tell you what, that is not what I was expecting. I was expecting you to say, it used to be 99, now it's 97. Now I hate doing it, but I have to agree with Paul. That's phenomenal. That you guys have been able to keep this under control and keep them energized and engaged. I mean, that's wonderful.
Laura, can you guys speak to the individual classrooms, like what the attendance is on each of the individual days? Because I know that students can sign in first thing in the morning in homeroom, but do they stay for every single class throughout the day? And are they in full attendance? Is there 9 periods in a day? Are they attending all the classes?
I can speak to that. I certainly think that that's something that is problematic. It's uneven. So we have period by period attendance, but our daily attendance, so our attendance robocalls and our daily attendance rate is driven by 1 period. So it certainly is problematic because we have students who are logging in and they may or may not be attending all of their class periods. So you will see that their daily attendance rate may be different than their period attendance rate. It's not unique to this year. The problem is that when they are in the building physically, their ability to quote unquote cut class is a lot less, right? Once they sign in for the day, they're there. There's not places to hide in Millbrook High School or Millbrook Middle School. They're there, we're on top of them. We make sure that once they're in the building, they get from class to class. But when they're home, they have recognized that if they sign in for the period that drives attendance, they won't get the robocall that goes to a parent. And then they can sneakily maybe not join their other classes. And they may get an email or they may get other notification, but they're not getting that daily attendance call. So we are working on that and we are trying to remedy that so that it actually will be a period notification that goes in the robocall so that instead of just getting an attendance call that's driven by 1 period, it actually will notify the parent of all the periods that a child missed. So we're working to remedy that and make a solution so that that won't be a possibility in the future.
So we have the data. We're trying to work out how to act on it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Do you have any of that data to share, Caroline? Like, I don't know, like the 11th grade class? I mean, definitely not a particular teacher or anything, but do you have any data to speak to that so we can see like real time, like what's happening?
Well,
the reason I'm asking is because I know from my own sons when they don't attend a class or they're late for a class or like we've said, the examples of the like the Wi-Fi going out at home or something. So I know that we get an email notification right away to say, or very shortly afterwards, that your child did not attend class. it's a heads up for me. And then I'm immediately on the phone calling home, like, what are you guys doing? And then, we get an explanation and, all that. But do you have any sort of data? Because I think, like we said, like, I think this is going to be what we're seeing on the screen now is going to be very different from what we see on a daily basis. Like, from period to period.
But you guys are going to maybe not robocall, but email or something on class by class. You just don't have that working yet. Am I mishearing that, or?
So actually on the next slide, what the numbers that you will see on the next slide actually are reflective of the students who have period by period attendance absences. So that is the data that you will see. They were hand counted to reflect that. Whereas the data that is collected in the school tool system is driven by daily absences. So when we did this work in the collection of data, we actually went and hand counted the data so that it would reflect the period absences, not just those that are the daily absences.
So what am I looking at here?
This right here is the number of students who, so we didn't just use that number that is the robocall number. We actually counted the number. So the 70 students are not just the students that attend that one period to get off that robocall list. Those are the 70 students at the high school that aren't necessarily attending for their full day, even if they're avoiding that robocall phone call. Now, out of those 70 students, it was about 60 of them are fully remote students. So again, it goes back to, we have a much greater ability to be able to track and help those students get to all of their classes when they are in person. And I don't want to hijack the rest of this because this is Laura's presentation, but that was the answer, the very long way answer to that one question about the ability to track those attendance pieces, the two different attendance pieces.
But Caroline, these are number of students that actually missed periods, not how many periods were actually missed, right? So it's
actually the total number of students who are considered chronically absent by missing more than 10% or more of days
gotcha. Okay.
thus far in the school year.
I'm confused. So these are 70 students that missed 10% of actually going in for a day, not
attending, not going in, attending. So if they are a fully remote student that's attending online.
Okay. So, but this doesn't say that. This just says 70% or 24% of those kids didn't show up.
Correct.
And from a class by class basis, like this one came in, but didn't go to science or didn't go to physics.
Right. So if you look at it, if that student signed in for that period that drives daily attendance, but didn't sign in for any of the others, we still counted them as a chronically absent student.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Go ahead, Laura.
Thanks, Caroline. Your input is always welcome. Never apologize. And we just want to say about missing 10% at this point in the school year is about 9 days.
Wow.
Can I just ask the follow-on question? So chronically means they missed the rest of the whole day or one or more classes in that day?
School day.
They missed the whole school day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So there's other kids that probably miss a fraction of a day, correct?
Yes.
So 20.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't tell the whole picture. Absolutely not. Neither does the first slide. There are so many nuances and so many scenarios. This is sort of broad strokes. But if the board would like a little more granular dive, we're happy to bring that information forward as well.
What you got here? Thanks.
And just have to say, when starting this analysis and in conversations with the principals, these numbers have changed already. There were students that were not attending and now are attending. Their first day was today. So the work behind all of these numbers is tremendous. They're heavy lifts for principals and guidance counselors and school psychologists. and the attendance teams and Caroline to move these, to decrease these numbers one by one. The beauty of our district is we're small and we know our students very well, and we have good partnerships with our parents. So it's a lot of work, but it's really good work.
So Laura, so overall 25% of the students in the high school are considered chronic absenteeism.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Correct, yeah.
Are the teachers keeping a log, like, I mean, if this was, are the teachers keeping, obviously they are keeping a log, and are they emailing the parents and letting them know that your child didn't attend right away? Is it, do they wait to the end of the day, or are they doing it right when they miss the period? Like how, tell me how that goes. Like, what is it that they're doing?
I want to say, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rick.
That's fine. I was just going to speak to that a little bit. So obviously once attendance becomes a concern with, in a particular class, they don't wait until it reaches that 8 or 9 number. Obviously they're a little more proactive, especially if it's not information that we're made aware of. Typically, if a student is absent, they are calling in to Mrs. Mattis and reporting that child's absence. So if the teachers aren't aware of that and then they're just missing random classes, then those classroom teachers are reaching out to those parents and inquiring about, or maybe even just notifying them that they're not attending their classes, just so that they could get their support at home to make sure that those students are logging in or attending school, however they're, whatever model of learning that they're doing this particular school year. Then if it continues, once it reaches a few numbers, 4 or 5 numbers, they're referring those students to our guidance counselors. We meet as a RTI team bi-weekly. We then sometimes assign members to reach out to those students and families just to make those connections of those who have relationships, just to see what we could do to provide any support to make sure that we, ease their transition back into school if it's a situation where they're out periodically. And then myself, along with our guidance counselors, at every 5-week period and at the end of every marking period, we meet with the students that are excessively absent and or not doing well academically. So we're making those phone calls or meetings with those students and families together to problem solve to make sure that they're not falling further behind. So those are some of the things that we do to make sure that we get them back on track.
I would almost think that, and it goes back to my question about technology, is, if my son doesn't log into physics, why am I not, hey, your son's not here. Boom. Just, a quick text message, email, whatever you want to call it, to, so I can get on them like right away. I mean, the small, lower grades, I mean, in most cases, they've got somebody there, sort of going, are you on your 9:30 session? But, high school students, I mean, that's a lot of kids that are just, chronically absent. And it doesn't even get down to the ones that skipped a class or something.
What are the consequences?
To give you a little perspective about the challenging times. So when we were asked to help out with this data, I actually took a look at last year's data in terms of students who were chronically absent from September 1st, 2019 to January 12th, 2020. And that total was 1 student. So these are just really the challenging and unusual circumstances that we're dealing with. And I have to tell you, I've been very involved in this respect, just because of the number of students that are impacted, and the parents are aware, they recognize the challenges. It's just very difficult for a lot of our high school students for various reasons. And Laura already spoke to a lot of them, but there's just a lot of challenges for these students to reconnect and attend school. And they feel like a lot of things are kind of like insurmountable, and it's just becoming a little bit more and more stressful for them.
Well, Rick, I got to say the intervention approach, and, Claudia was bringing up consequences, but it's almost like, the old days are going with pins and CPS and stuff. I mean, you guys are doing so much more now. Look at the world, man, around us. I mean, the kids, you don't think they see what's going on with this country with all that stuff? That's scary to them. But like, there's a lot of insecurity. There's, people like, that aren't able to have their meals. Like I have kids right on my block that I know mom and dad are going to work. They're responsible for their learning of the younger kids. Like they're like the older tutors and to get their work done. And when you're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old men, young men and young ladies, you could call a parent at work. Those days are over where I'm calling my house and saying, hey, you get on there. In a lot of places, it doesn't happen like that. Some homes, maybe it does. But I know the high school kids I deal with, I'm dealing with the kid more than the parent to get inside the kid's head to say, hey, why can't you log on give me 2 periods today? Give me 2 periods out of 6. Like a kid that comes in and doesn't read they're reading on first grade level. We're not going to get them to the 6th grade level in a year. You're going to get them to 2.5 as grade or second, a grade level. So I know from my own self, conversations with these young adults is like, Mr. Tobey, you don't understand what's going on in my life. Like, this sucks here now for me, man. This is crazy. I had my spring sports season taken away, no prom. Kids are depressed. They're dealing with a lot of different, and it's not an excuse. It's like, it's real, it's there. And I think that the help and the security that you guys are providing is going to go a lot further than the gotcha conversations with the parents and, where the attendance police. And I think that is, you guys, the approach you're taking, you're going to get a lot more success out of that with some of these kids returning. Is it a high number? Yeah. But look at the level. You're talking about kids 15, 16, 17, 18 years old that their worlds have been rocked like all of ours. But we're 50, I'm 58 years old. I understand it from my perspective. These kids don't understand it, and I'm just saying, I can't say enough. And I know that you guys as principals, Steve, Mike, you, Rick, to be involved like this at the level that you guys are involved, small school or not, it's unbelievable. And like I said, the punitive part and the code of conduct, at some point you get to that, and if you have to eventually, call up CPS, you don't want to do that. It's the last ditch effort. But I think, like I said, I think you guys are going to see continued increase with trying to help these kids out. That's the real deal. That's how I see it. I really do.
But you're talking about 1 out of 4 kids that's going to have to repeat their grade, I would think. If you're missing, 10% of school, I would, unless they're, part of the reason is they just, they don't feel they need it. But if it's 1 out of 4, they're going to end up repeating whatever grade they're in or classes they're in. I mean, that's, I hear what you're saying, Paul, but damn, 1 out of 4. I mean, if it's that bad, maybe we need to start hiring a ton of counselors to just chase the kids around.
Well, I'd like to say that Paul is right, and so are you, Perry. Dealing with high school, and I wouldn't use the word depressed because it's a clinical diagnosis from a licensed medical psychiatrist. But yes, they're down. They think the world has cheated them, which it has. It's cheated everybody. Their entire assumed world up to this point, the young adults, has everything they've assumed growing up has crashed more or less. But forgetting punishment and everything else, we have to figure out how to re-engage and not lose this generation in our high school, because they are going to be tomorrow's leaders and inventors, and we don't want to create if they don't graduate from here, some of them will go back for GEDs, and some of them will just never go back and become and will underachieve their potential. And I don't have the answer. I wish I did. I think what they're attempting is good, but we have to try to do something. I don't know.
You also got to keep in mind, even though they're missing more classes than they were last year, it doesn't necessarily mean they're failing the classes. So, I mean, hopefully they're keeping up with their studies if they have to help siblings. I mean, hopefully we're keeping an eye on that as well. And I'm sure there's some that are just over 10 and there's some that are extremely over 10. So like I think Laura said before, or Caroline said before, these numbers don't say everything.
But Chris, Caroline, the last meeting did speak about, that's why I was asking about consequences, because Caroline, I believe it was Caroline, the last meeting, she did speak about if they miss so many classes, like it brings them, Caroline, you want to speak? I think it was you that talked about that, you know, then there's a different component that happens, like with suspension or failing or I don't, something like that, right, Caroline?
Yeah, so we spoke about that, and I think that we're going to have to look at policy because there was some policy and procedure, if you recall, that we had looked a couple of years ago at making sure that the policies were only in existence in the policy handbook and not in the code of conduct or in the student handbook. So we're going to have to look at the alignment of all of that to make sure that, you know, all of that is 100% in alignment, because some of that is no longer in play as well. So that's something that we want to be very careful about. But, you know, another thing that we have to be really clear about is the fact that some of these students have lost everything that motivated them. For some of these students, the reason they came to school, you know, whether it's something that we subscribe to or not, is, you know, athletics, clubs. The reason that, you know, they engaged in their academics was so that they could play sports after school, or the reason that they engaged in academics was so that they could participate in, you know, the theater. And they don't have that right now. So for some of these students, you know, their academics may not have been the most motivating reason why they got up and went to school in the morning. That's just the reality, right? It's something that they had to do. It's something that they did because it was a responsibility of theirs, but it wasn't their, you know, first and foremost. But they did it, and they did it successfully. And, you know, they did it because it was a responsibility that they had to do what they love and they valued. They don't have that motivating factor. And what they also don't have by, you know, being home is they don't have all of the adults in the building keeping that close eye on them when they're walking down the hallway, being able to, you know, pick up on body language, being able to be that solid object for them. And, you know, that's what, if there's one thing that I could say that I really wish, is that we could, you know, get these students back in physically in the building, even if it's just those 2 days a week, because I do think it makes a huge difference in terms of their mental health. To have those adults who really are able to connect with them. If you look at Search Institute out of the Midwest, they identified 40 developmental assets for students, and they actually designated a tipping point where students have, if they have more assets, they're able to thrive. And some of those assets come from within the student, and, you know, it's difficult for a school to be able to impact the assets that come from within the student or within the student's home environment. But so many of them come from within the student's school environment, and we can make an impact on that. We can talk about, you know, preparing for the future, goal setting, and a lot of them talk about the impact of a positive adult outside the home. Having those 3 positive adults outside the home a lot of times come from the school, and the ability to bond in the school environment. That's really challenging right now. Everything that you're talking about in this current pandemic is about those relationships. And I feel like if we can't get them on these meets, and if we can't get them in attendance because we can't get them in the building, you know, this is where the struggles are. So I know that, Laura, we have some on the next slide. We have some of those interventions that we're looking to put into play. And I think one of them is really going to be a big difference maker for some of these students. So I don't know if you want to, if no one has any other questions about this part.
The only question I had was, I mean, we as a board are not going to, you know, magically find a solution for you. Who is, what can we do to help? What can we do to, what do you need from us to help that? Maybe that's where you're headed, but, you know, we can sit and discuss all day about changing, you know, behavior and all those things. I don't think we as a board have, you know, have the magic wand to fix that. but is there something that you guys need from us, especially at the high school, middle school, to, you know, to make this better, or to get better, you know, handle on it or whatever? I think that's the key question.
I think the recognition that there isn't a magic wand, and that, you know, so far we have not heard of any action to remove the Regents exams. You know, this is real. This is school. There are responsibilities that we have here, and I understand that it's really challenging and really difficult. But we need to do this, and we need to do this together. You know, we have plenty of people who are willing to work and support these students. They are here in the building. We did just get notification from the Department of Health that schools have not been identified to be, you know, the super spreaders that they were concerned in the beginning might be. So, you know, I would encourage parents, if they feel safe, please, you know, send the students to school. If even for the 2 days a week, if that's something that you feel comfortable doing, and you've made that request for the second semester, please, you know, ensure that your student comes to school for those 2 days. It's going to make a big difference. And I feel like it will make a huge difference in their mental health as well. Them feeling connected to that school environment again is going to make a huge difference for them.
Is there any way that you can send that email to the parents, or or put it on the website for people to read? Is it something that's shareable?
The email from the Department of Health, do you mean?
Yeah. To let the parents know that? Is that possible?
I mean, we can share the information that's shared with us from the Department of Health, of just saying that schools we follow the procedures where we have to. We follow the guidelines. That's why we're so safe. There's no memo, but we can craft a letter to parents.
Oh, I was just asking. That's you guys, but I was just like, if you know, if this will help with the attendance in school and going to classes and stuff, maybe, you know, that's a little bit of encouragement for the parents.
Yeah.
I just want to say, you know, looking at this, you know, first thing I thought back is our November discussions about having to get the elementary back full time, and I know right now is not a good time to do any of that stuff, but this almost cries out for the opposite. The higher grades need attention, you know.
And to Perry's question, you know, I think part of it is what we need from the board, and I feel like we have it, is that the numbers can be jarring, right? 70 high schoolers are chronically absent, but there is a story for each one of those students, for all of these students, and that we wanted you to know the work that goes behind having our students in attendance, being here every day, excited about learning, engaging, participating, and invested in feeling responsible for their own education. So we just wanted to share all of the pieces, and actually everything that was shared doesn't even exhaust the smallest things that teachers, or the smallest moves that educators make to make a student valued and want to be part of a school community.
Just a sort of a side question is, so these 70 students, are you know, I'm assuming they're in AA or BB, do they only miss school, you know, let's say they're AA, they go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is when they don't show up? Or is it they're just not showing up?
No, out of the 70 students, roughly 60 of them are actually fully remote.
So that's 85%.
They're not attending, you know, even remotely.
And this is the parents' decision, basically, most of it?
Yeah.
So have we had that discussion with the parents about, you know, the numbers we're seeing of the students? You know, we have 10 students that are hybrid, I assume, that are not there, but we have 60 students that are chronically absent. they're, you know, and the other side is, do we have an idea of, I mean, it's probably a, you know, subjective thing, but do we know where they are? I mean, some of it, if a student, you know, gets the assignment, drops off and goes and does the assignment, you know, that's the way college works. But if they're just not showing up on you know, they're just not doing the work, that's and not getting the benefit.
Right. And, you know, this isn't college, so that's one of the things, right? And our teachers are marking that they're present during that time period. So it's a little bit different when we're dealing with high school students. So that's one thing. I know that that's presenting some of the issue. And again, we did say that in some of these cases, you know, Chris did make the point that some of these students may have, you know, just over that 9 absences, and some of them may have significantly more than that. Some of them may be completing their work, and some of them may not be completing any of their work. You know, so there are a wide range of scenarios that we're dealing with these students. Some of them may be in constant communication with their teachers. Some of them may be signing on, completing their work, submitting it in the Google Classroom. And some of them may not be signing on at all, or maybe signing on for that, you know, period that drives daily attendance, and then may not be logging in for any of the other periods. So there's a lot of different variations of what this might look like.
Caroline, you might go further, but did you guys have in the next slides like the special ed students and ENL students and maybe students that might be hospitalized at this point, like for maybe issues with mental health or anything? Do we know anything about those numbers?
So
out of those 70 at the high school.
Right. So if you recall, our students with disabilities and our L students are eligible for in-person instruction. So any of those students would be part of the 10 that would be able to come in.
Okay.
And we did not disaggregate the data into any of our categories of students. We just kept it as total numbers.
Okay.
All right.
Just one more slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Assume if there's something specific you need from us, like, you know, I don't know. I don't know what we can do to help.
Thank you.
But keep going.
Elliot, can you go to the last slide? Great. And so just moving forward, the cohorts for third quarter have been established. So building principals will share new cohort information with families this week. We've added an alternating Wednesday for blue and grade cohorts. So this has increased in-person days for a number of students. We will continue to use multiple data points such as attendance, student progress, RTI, CSE referrals, et cetera, to identify students who are struggling academically in preparation to invite more students in person should the opportunity present itself, such as this Wednesday alternating, we were able to increase in-person time for some students. We're going to continue most definitely to build our school community using multiple strategies that engage and attach families, students to each other and us. Currently, we're putting a mentor program into place. And then as Caroline said, we're going to collaboratively review attendance policies and procedures. Right now, some of them are unclear or used unevenly. So we want to visit them and make them clearer so that folks know what expectations, families know expectations, students know expectations, staff knows expectations when dealing with attendance.
So, but I'm still confused. I mean, the focus, you know, I think it's great if you make the Wednesday, you know, possible, but that's only, you know, 1 out of 7 kids that's missing 10% or more. Have we talked to them about a way to make this remote thing, you know, as more fun or more engaging, or, you know, I mean, I watch what the little ones do, and even when they're online, they're interacting with each other, especially during the brain breaks, I guess you call it. Have we talked to these 60 students to say, what can we do? Do we? I just watched a stupid football game that Nickelodeon was doing. So I mean, is there something we can do to make this more attractive?
Well, one piece that I was going to say in superintendent remark, I mean, it's just a small piece and may be attractive, is esports. We've been talking about that as a team and sort of how to engage our kids, how to get them back, how to, add a little competitiveness, something they've been missing from athletics. So these are little pieces that we're thinking about. The mentoring piece should be attractive to other students and may engage them. So we're trying to figure out different programs and initiatives that we know they've expressed interest in and trying to bring them into district. And the ongoing conversations of like, what can we do? What is it that you need to attend this class or attend this day? Those are ongoing conversations. And it's a new semester, so it's a new year. So I think that we can provide students with fresh starts and a new energy for the future.
Yeah, I mean,
Things to look forward to.
If we understand it, so we know the kids that just, I didn't go because I didn't want to, versus the kid that says, I didn't make it because I've got to, I've got to take care of my two siblings and get them online. And by the time I get them online, I mean, I don't know. That the high school number is really disheartening.
Yeah.
So if I could just add one more thing, in true transparency, as we shared, 60 of those 70 students are fully remote. And the conversations that I've had with the students and parents, because we have so much room in our high school, because over a third of students are fully remote, I really try to encourage students not to only come on their cohort days, but to come in the full week, or Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, if they were struggling with the remote learning model. But they didn't even take me up on that offer. They're just again really struggling with the current situations.
So Rick, let me clarify one thing. So there's 70 students that missed at least one period more than 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they're checking in and they're missing the rest of the entire day. They might just miss one period during the day 9 times during that time frame.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Well, I'm not trying to minimize it in any way. I'm just trying to make it sound like they don't check in and they're out forever.
That's true. It does vary from student to student.
Right.
In a lot of the cases, most of the students are missing multiple classes.
Oh, okay.
Per day.
Okay.
Yep.
Good to know.
Oh.
Do we need, would we like to see another piece of information like the overall missed classes kind of gives us another dimension? Would that help at all to see how the other students might be doing? Because we right now we only know about chronic.
I think so. I think it would put things more into perspective for everybody. So, I mean, just not only us, but I think it would do if, any parents are watching too, that they could see what's going on.
Yeah.
And,
So what was that specific information you were looking for, John? I'm sorry.
Some sort of metric about just overall missed classes. Obviously, maybe you could factor out these 70 students also, just to give us an idea of what's going on with the other group.
Sure.
And maybe looking at other districts, see, are they seeing the same level of numbers in the high school? If they are, have they found anything? Reach out to some of these supposed experts on, remote learning and see if they've got any advice to re-engage these kids. And these, I mean, the worst part is this has got to be something we jump on, because we're halfway through the school year.
So I could just, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Rick.
I was just going to share. So I'm part of a secondary email group with the local high school student or principals, excuse me. And trust me when I tell you, we're not the only struggling high school with the chronic absences. As a matter of fact, we probably stand a little bit better than the surrounding schools. So it's not just an issue here at Millbrook. It's actually far worse in other surrounding districts. But and I kind of got the heads up because we started so late. We didn't start our hybrid model until November. When we were visiting some schools, they gave me the heads up that they were struggling with attendance already in September and October.
The other thing too is you would think when you're missing 1 out of 10 days on average, it probably has performance ramifications, right? Achievement ramifications. So I don't know how we get our arms around that either to see how well things are going.
Well, Rick, are the classes that they're taking, are they recorded so that, you know, let's say I don't go, you know, to physics at 10 o'clock. Can I go on and watch the physics lecture at 8 o'clock at night? I mean,
No, they're not recorded now. The assignments and the homework, the classwork, the assignments are up embedded in Google Classroom. So
Yeah.
some students who miss class can still complete the classwork and or homework assignments.
I mean, I'm wondering, you know, I know it's late and it may not even have any value, but maybe we should look at our flexibility, you know, the ability to, because, and again, I know this isn't college, but in college, you can listen to a lecture anytime you want. I mean, and forget about the Southern New Hampshire, those kind of schools, but almost all schools now have the ability to go listen to the lecture later on. You know, I mean, this is, we do need to focus on the attendance, but what worries me more is, you know, 25%, 60 kids are probably not, if they didn't go to class and they have no way to watch the thing later on, you know what I mean? That they're just not getting the information.
True, but you don't want a 9th grader saying, "Oh, you can watch this at midnight tonight if you're, you know, and not bother with it." Do we know what grade levels? Is it all across the 9 to 12, or more of the 11 and 12, or does anybody know that?
No, but I don't, but we can bring it to the next board meeting with the other requests.
Yeah, I'd like to think. I think the board would like to hear, you know, to see if there's any, you know, more breakdown.
My guess is 10. My guess is 10, 11.
Mhm.
That's my guess.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but you and Steve have had conversations about, since we've been talking about attendance now, it's sort of as triggered, you know, more about thinking about performance and what the end of the year is for our students. And you have meetings with students towards the end of the year, sort of like the things that you need to do, the course credit that you need, or the assignments that you need to catch up on, and pushing those conversations closer to now, February, March.
Yeah, and our counselors have been having those conversations throughout the entire school year so far. So especially in these meetings that I've been part of, they're required, they're Regents-based classes, they're required for graduation purposes. So again, this is part of the conversation that we've been having about the importance for them to be in school, because if they're not, it's going to be very difficult to pass these required classes by New York State.
Thank you.
If the Regents is even given again, so.
And to be honest with you, and again, in true transparency, obviously they waived the Regents exams last year and the students were exempt. So as long as they were passing the class last year, they got Regents credit. So that's kind of been part of my push by just almost begging and pleading with them to please attend class, participate, do your work, and if you're passing, if we're in the similar situation that we were in last school year, then you're going to get credit and Regents credit.
Right.
So, but it's honestly, it hasn't really changed much, to be honest with you.
Has it been pretty constant, Rick, or have you seen an incline recently?
It's been
Just curious.
It's
Pretty
been
constant?
Pretty
Okay.
consistent, yeah.
Okay. That meant consistent.
I mean, and the weird thing, I don't see this remote stuff getting any better. I mean, if they come out with a vaccine and say, you got to vaccinate teachers, administrate, staff and children, or you can't go to school. Yeah. I mean, how many people are going to just bail on it and go homeschool, or not homeschool, but, fully remote? I don't know. I just, if there's something you guys can think through, if you need, funding, you need our support on something, I don't know what else we can do, really. I gotta believe you guys are all over this. So if there's something, like I said, it would be nice to see where the other districts are, but I don't know if anybody's going to publish that information. I don't know. Really,
someone said it before, everyone has a story, and as long as we find their pain and try to find a way we can relieve it to get them in, and it sounds like that's what you're trying to do. That's the goal.
Now again, do you have, I hate to ask this because I know the answer is no. Do you have enough staff to really focus on these kids? Do we have the level of I'm not even sure who the right people would be, but people that can go and counsel, work with these students to figure out where the root cause of it is?
So we're in the early stages of a mentoring program with our teachers, but when you link students up with these students, they really need to have a working relationship and a trusting relationship with these classroom teachers. So you don't want to just link up a student with a teacher and they have no connection or, building or no working relationship with them. So it's been a working progress. So we're working on that. And again, I'm open to any other ideas that anyone else has.
Try any students, friends with other students, and maybe, Chris said, everybody has a story, but 75% of a high school has a story too, but 75% come in. So that's a positive. So if we can build upon the positive and try to have the positive outreach to the not so positive, maybe you can pick a few off.
All right. Anything else, Laura?
Nope, that's it. Thank you very much for listening and for your good ideas and care for our kids.
And thanks for leaving it on a high note. Jesus. All right. Let's see. I lost my agenda. Okay. Well, Laura, one thing, and I'll throw this out. You guys on the board can tell me, forget it. I'd like to make this a regular discussion, maybe one, pick a meeting, maybe it's the first meeting of each month. We really need to keep our eyes on this. And if you guys make some progress and you find out you need something, please don't hesitate to bring it to us.
Thank you.
All right. So the next is the vice president's reports. Really what I wanted to do, we've been talking about the tools that we can use, the not just tools, but the categories within the tools that we can use for the regular review of the superintendent and then possibly others. So I'd just like to get an update from the folks that have been working on that. Chris, I think it's Chris, John, and Howard. Did I get that right?
Paul.
Oh, sorry, Paul. So, where are we on recommending a tool on a set of rubrics?
John, you want to take this?
Oh, of course, you can start if you want.
No, I think we all kind of agreed that the NISBA review pretty much gave us everything that we needed. I do think that we were going to take a look at, is it Super Eval? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Just to see what they had to offer and what the cost was and if it could help us in any other areas. But I believe the NISBA, correct me if I'm wrong, John and Paul, but we agreed that that one was pretty much covering all the bases we needed. It was simple. It was, can be done online. It's pretty much the tool that could help us at least get to the next level, because we don't really have a level at this point. So.
No, I agree. I think we talked about, both models we looked at and the old model, which is the, one that John had, struggled and put so much time into over the years. And then the NISCOS one was New York State Council on School Superintendents, and the NISBA one. And we all agreed that NISBA one would serve us well, and Laura was part of it too. And then the training that goes along with it, and I think the software itself would make it just very, very efficient for us to be able to, separately grade out and then put as a board our thoughts together to work with developing the district and the leadership from the top position in the district, and also tying in district goals. There's an opportunity there to do that as well. That's one of the avenues that I like about the NISBA the best. So I think we all agreed, all four parties on the call on Friday, that would be the direction to really go in. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you guys said it well. By the way, both instruments were better than what we have. So.
Yeah. So assuming that nothing comes out of, or nothing amazing comes out of this other tool that you're going to look at, can we get on with NISBA and see if we can't get a Zoom retreat to, because what sort of worries me is, we're all new, other than, the bearded one. We're all new to this, and I want to make sure that everybody is sort of on the same page with, when you're talking about leadership, you're talking about this, and when you're talking about this, you're talking about this. Maybe Cheryl, can you, I'm assuming, like I said, if you guys are good and nobody, I'll throw it out to the board in a second. Can you see if NISBA, what they would, assuming they'd package it together with the tool, what it would take to get us a retreat,
Yep.
And maybe we could just, I don't know how long that would take, an hour or two, but maybe we could get that scheduled as soon as we can.
Yep, I'll give a call tomorrow.
All right.
So Perry, the focus would be on the evaluation tool, or would it be on the process too? I think we have to be clear with what we want.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, John. It's really making sure that we know how to use the tool, of course, but it's more the process. When does it happen? I mean, there's regular schedule. What is each, so that we're not each sort of, leadership, one leader is somebody who can't lead hungry dogs to meat. It's understanding how we're going to review, what the basis for review is, and then when it happens, and not just the review, but defining this stuff in the summertime so the superintendent knows what they're supposed to do or what they're being held to for the rest of the year. This COVID thing has really hosed all this up, but if we get moving on this, we can, bring it into the next, bring the whole process into the next go round.
As far as the scheduling, both instruments had suggestions, and you don't have to use one or the other. You could use whatever works for the board. If the board wants to do something in February instead of when somebody says something in April, you can do that. So it's just sitting down and deciding what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why I say, I mean, if it was just the tool, we could probably do that in a half an hour, you know, for most of us. But if it's the, you know, if it's the process and how we're going to use it and documenting that so that we do it the same way every year from now on, that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
And do they have a flip phone version, Howard?
I don't know if you remember, but what was it, about 2 years ago, I guess? I went to the NYSSBA in person back in the old days, seminar on the evaluations, and I brought back the packet for everybody describing this tool, and we went over it, but the cost, I believe, turned some people off, even though it wasn't, I didn't think it was that high. So if anybody still has any of that training material that I brought back left, you know, I'll look for mine. But at that time, I thought the NYSSBA one was the way to go. I thought at the time it was like $500.
Yeah, I mean, especially if we can tie it together with, you know, we really need to get this process, you know, so that we're all reviewing on the same, not just criteria, but the same impact. I think that, you know, if we can tie it together somehow with a retreat, that'll work out. So does anybody else on the board have an issue with us moving forward on it? Okay. All right, Cheryl, just give me a call and let me know what they say, and then we'll see it, you know, the board members, what a good date for a retreat is.
Okay, I'll ask them for a few dates too, so.
I gotta go find the agenda here. Okay. Howard, did you have anything?
No, I have nothing further.
Okay. Laura?
So superintendent's remarks. I started out when I was planning on what I was going to share with the board and the community. I had slides getting ready for what testing in schools would look, sound, and feel like. Then I had a meeting with the Department of Health and County, and it sort of blew it all up. So I'm going to give you just a quick overview of where we are, because we have come so far from where we started planning when we first received information about microclusters and yellow zones, red zones, orange zones, surveillance testing, 20% bi-monthly or every month. So right now, we're sort of in a holding pattern regarding testing. Currently, we're waiting for the Department of Health and County to provide us with clear and solid direction regarding testing, vaccinations, and the 9% that Cuomo referred to in one of his press conferences. Is it 9% county? Is it 9% state? Is it 9% in a school district? It was very confusing about a slide that he presented at one of his press conferences, what this 9% means. So during our last weekly meeting with the Department of Health and County, the message from both parties that they were concentrating more on the vaccination plan and not worried about testing. And that if we wanted to do testing, we could. According to the Department of Health, the reason to test is to identify any major discrepancies between the county numbers and school numbers, and just trying to monitor the health of our school community. And that's what would happen if we were doing a surveillance testing. But testing right now, we don't understand. The big question around testing right now, is it required or not? And if it's not, do we as a district want to continue our testing plan and implement our surveillance testing to monitor the health of our school community? I also want to mention that the release of the vaccination sites and the inclusion of Tier 1B, which includes our teachers, was a complete surprise by myself and my fellow superintendents. When I found out on Saturday, it was a mad scramble to get this information out to our staff to see if they could schedule appointments to get vaccinated, anybody who was agreeable to it. None of these two items, neither one of them were mentioned during our meeting. So it's not pushing anybody under any buses, because there's a lot of information happening, a lot of change happening. I'm sure Department of Health and the county are being bombarded with different kinds of information as well. And it's a little frustrating because we want to lead with good information, and we find ourselves as district leaders sort of scrambling as well and trying to make sense of the information that keeps changing. So I want to apologize to families in the board when I don't have clear direction right now. But hopefully tomorrow when we meet with the county and Department of Health, we'll be able to know more about the vaccinations, more about the testing, and more about that 9%. I do want to say that I'm happy that educators are included in this wave. It's just that the implementation, once again, was surprising and confusing, and we're left to react. And I think everybody's very exhausted by reacting on every level, everybody.
I mean, did they say anything about like, okay, you're going to tell me, all my teachers have to be vaccinated. What if I say no? Or
right.
Testing. What if I say, no, you're not testing my kid? Am I out? Or not me, but my student, are they out of the school? I mean, I to be honest with you, and I know this is not really the proper place to do it, but if I was a parent and I had a problem with vaccination or testing, I'd start writing letters, and not to the Millbrook School Board, because we have no idea what those, what the regulations are. But you need to start writing your letters to Albany now, before they make the decision that they're going to add this, like, our kids have to be inoculated before they start school for certain things, or they can't go. Well, if they're going to add this, it better now to tell them that you don't agree with it. Same thing with the mandatory testing. If we're told to test, we have to, I assume, because I haven't seen anything from anybody saying it's optional. So, I mean, have they said anything about what if a parent says, no, you're not testing my kid?
Well, we would be, part of the plan it's a consent form. So we would send out a survey to parents to get their consent to test their child.
Mm-hmm. No, I meant like if they send it back and say no, what happens? Does that kid have to be fully remote? Does, same thing happens if they say, are you willing to get your kid immunized? And they say no, is it, they have to be fully remote from that point on?
Not with the testing piece, that it's a consent. We're going to ask parents whether they want their child to be, it's a swab. And when students come in and staff come in, they're considered asymptomatic. Some parents may jump on it and say, actually, I do want my child tested. I want to make sure that he or she is healthy and doesn't have, is asymptomatic and has COVID related symptoms. So I think if we move forward, we're going to look for parental consent, and we're going to reach out to staff to see who are agreeable, who are willing to be tested.
Okay. Yeah, I think the superintendents as a group should, and include the boards too, should almost demand that they tell us, are you making this mandatory or not? Mm-hmm. The state should be, if they're going to put these plans out, they should be able to tell us whether or not this is just a suggestion.
Yeah.
All right.
So one other piece just on the COVID front, you'll see in new business a memorandum of understanding, and that was negotiated between the Department of Health, the Dutchess County Department of Health, Department of Behavioral and Community Health, and the Dutchess County component districts, us. Over the past few months, we've been working on it. And really this memorandum allows us to test under the Department of Health. So they are considered the limited service lab in the event that the school district is designated in a zone, or that we decide to do surveillance testing. So we work under their umbrella and their blessing. And then if this is agreeable to the board and you say yes, then this allows me to then reach out to the New York State Department of Health and request rapid test kits. If the board says no to this, then that really means that we're intending to go fully remote, only if we're designated as a zone, though. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Didn't I read that polling and who was it? And somebody else went ahead with ordering test kits and stuff already?
Yes, and
So what's,
that was just in the beginnings of this MOU, and they requested and they received, and it's sort of an outlier of from my understanding of receipt of these tests.
so are all 13 plus Dutchess County going together with this strategy, or some are going their own way
This is the strategy right now.
for all districts in the county?
Correct, yep. And we've been working closely with the county, working closely with our council, working closely with the Department of Health and each other. And really, who knows is in the end, is this for naught, right? We're putting the pieces in place towards testing, but we don't know if the full focus will go on vaccination and this all goes in the garbage. But at least we're ready, we're prepared.
Yeah, even if you order the test, it's not a mandate that you have to open. I mean, God forbid it goes to 15 to 20%. I mean, we could change our mind at that point. You're just being proactive at this point to order the test, is what you're saying.
Yes, if we're a zone, it's 20%. That's the number that you have to test, and that's staff and
Right.
We could sort of create our own pathway if we go surveillance testing. Maybe I'm rose-colored glasses, but I'm assuming that the 20% is founded on research, based on research, and that we would want to use the 20% too, but I don't really know what the rationale is, so I'll ask the question.
You'll hear like the governor says, science. Nobody asks what science, but question, if we go to 20%, how do you plan on doing the lottery?
I think we were thinking of using, well, we would do 20% per building. We have small teams, that are made up of 2 nurses and 1 or 2 folks who can help with the paperwork and the sort of the meeting and greeting and dismissal of students. Correct me if I'm wrong, Caroline, but I feel like there was a way we could do it randomly using School Tool. Was that an idea at one point of how we were going to do random?
Can use random selection of our in-person cohorts.
Yeah.
So who pays for these tests?
We don't.
So, and is there, like, let's say we order 1,000 tests and, you know, we only use 10. I mean, do they go bad? Are we responsible because we didn't use them and now we have to pay for them?
You got them left over, I know a guy.
Yeah, but even you know, if the state suddenly goes to, you know what, forget all this testing nonsense, just give them the shots. You know, I just want to make sure that these tests, you know, we don't have an entire room full of tests that we're just going to throw in the trash, even though we might. Well, and I mean, I hate to say it, but the taxpayers are paying for them one way or another.
Correct. We're not, right. But we are not it's not out of our pockets here in district.
I mean, obviously we don't want to go back to fully remote, if judging from the numbers at the high school. You know, if that spread to all our other schools, I don't know. I mean, to me, and I'll just give you my opinion, my personal opinion. I think we ought to order these tests and be ready for it.
If you want to stay open,
yeah,
it's the right thing to do. I mean, it's the you know, you have to. So whether you're in the orange, yellow, or red, you know, you're still going to be after. It's just a different percentage. Yeah. So you need the tools to do it. It's like, you know, you have to have the tool to do it, unless you want to close and just go, you know, all remote and then go backwards, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
And the only thing that really worries me is the state going to make any of this mandatory? And then what happens to students that or parents that say no? I mean, I think we all remember the the folks that came to see us about the immunizations, and but they still, it's still required to come into like kindergarten or enter the school district to have inoculations. So, they could make it mandatory, but I guess we have to cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah.
But to me, I think getting the tests, getting ourselves prepared, and data is good.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So next item I had was moving departments. So in collaboration and lots of conversation with Caroline and Brian, just regarding our team and the power of our team and the strength of our team, we are strong and we are powerful, but proximity weakens us a bit. So in conversation, we decided that we'd like to enhance and strengthen our collaboration, communication, and team building. And part of that is bringing the band back together. So we want to bring Caroline's team back into the middle school. So we met with Mike Ragusa and talked about, and the principals, to see where was possible space. We looked in the middle school and we looked in Elm. And Elm is a lovely space, and someday maybe that's something we want to explore, but it probably would require some HVAC, some emergency egresses and some other structural pieces, broadband, and maybe that's part of a larger capital project. But what is doable now and what we can make happen now is bringing Caroline's team up to the middle school. So we met and reconfigured room 19, where there are now, well, almost complete 2 offices and a front space for Cheryl Devine and Paige Emerson. So if you could show a couple of pictures, Brian, sort of the process. So let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So we're almost, as you can see, we're almost there. Thank you. So I wanted to share that. Did anybody have any questions about that? The rationale or?
And the priming and the painting are going to be happening in the next couple of days.
Right. And so hopefully we'll have the move completed by January, sometime in January.
I think, I mean, getting the team in one place where, especially right now with the daily, changes from the state and just the changing situation, you can't have people just spread all over. And I mean, I hate to say it, but for really no good reason. I think getting everybody together is the right thing to do. And before you tear out the room in Elm, can you let me go over there with a sledgehammer and take out that air conditioner that's falling out of the window? I hate that thing. Anyway, that's cool.
Yeah, we're excited. The next was esports, and I mentioned that earlier. Over the past, just a little background, over the past few years, esports programs have been popping up in K-12 schools in an effort to engage students, build school culture, and promote career and college readiness. So Kirsten arrived with experience in building such a program and has developed a draft plan of action for the Millbrook Central School District. And this starts with surveying student interest. So Elliot, sorry.
What does it actually mean, Laura? Is this like playing Madden football, or is this something completely different?
Elliot, do you want to give a little brief tease? Because he's also going to embed it in his presentation.
Sure. I can just speak briefly to it. So, this is competitive gaming, right? So we're looking at creating an environment where students that are unfortunately unable to compete in the more traditional ways that they're accustomed to can use our computer equipment to compete with each other in an environment that creates a level playing field. So I know, for example, when you're playing a basketball game like an NBA 2K game at home, by yourself, you're fielding the entire team as an individual. When these games are formatted for competitive league play, each player is controlling a player in a one-to-one, and they're kind of interacting that way. There's other games like Rocket League, and there's all kinds of things. I don't want to really name drop too many because I don't really know which way we're going to go yet, but it just creates an environment where kids can hone their skills, compete, and I'm sure you're all aware that 20, 30 years ago, video gaming was viewed as an extracurricular type of an on the side thing, but the skills that they're using between hand-eye coordination, teamwork, coordination, and really everything down to how they interface with the equipment and the software is all snowballing into their academic careers. So we're looking at an esports program that's not existent unto itself in a bubble, but something that will capitalize on what they're learning and utilize equipment that will also be leveraged in the classroom setting. So, this is all going to kind of round out what we're doing rather than be its own standalone thing. But we're kind of excited about it. I'd love to, share it with you guys and maybe give Kirsten a chance to really present her experience with it. Our goals are to canvass interest among our student population, see if there is a desire there. And Kirsten gave us some framework on what it would look like to pilot it in the spring semester this year. And if it goes well and we have that high level of interest, we can start to build this into our budget between technology and curriculum and extracurriculars going forward.
That's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Elliot, that's not that you can't use a Chromebook for those types of programs you were mentioning. So you'd have to get, different laptops or different gaming systems or whatever it might be if they don't have it already.
That's exactly right, Chris, and that's the goal, right? We don't want to. I don't want to come to the board and say, "Hey, I need X thousands of dollars for gaming laptops," right? But I want to say, if we invest in a high-powered piece of equipment that can function as a gaming computer, it can also be used in STEM classes and Project Lead the Way, and it would effectively replace these iMacs that are in a lab right now. So I don't want to create an additional expense, but I want to maybe just be smart about how we reallocate our money. And you guys have heard me speak about, our long-range planning as far as the technology arena, right? So we know that I have computers that I have to replace almost annually. It would be really just using this to inform our decisions on what we replace where, and create a competitive gaming computer lab of sorts that would also be used, for instruction during the day. So like, the STEM lab at, from 10 to 2 p.m. becomes the gaming lab at 2:30, something like that.
No, I mean, a friend of mine's son got a full ride, and I think it was Ohio State, to do esports. I mean, so this should, if we're going to do this, we should make sure that even after we get back to school, that we've thought it through to, hopefully there are still students that are interested in doing this, just because, not because they're remote, but because this is a cool thing. And I mean, some of these tournaments, the money is unbelievable.
Absolutely. And Perry, this appeals to a whole different kind of student. And I can tell you that in speaking with our principals, I know Rick, I know Steve Cavella have all been in touch with students who brought this to them. It's something that we've been kicking around as an administrative team, but it really got kicked into high gear, I think, when our students started to ask for ways to engage, and obviously not using our lexicon, but in their own words, they're looking for ways to compete and get involved. And, a lot of them are gaming at home anyway. So if we give them a chance to do it for us and hone that skill here, I mean, anyone that's in a technology adjacent field can tell you how these are skills that are very directly transferable to profession, even not as a gamer, but just as a technician, just as a worker, just as somebody who's going to have hands on keyboard as a professional. So, we do want to, canvass the interest. We want to start with a small group of kids. And we have to really discuss as an administrative team how we want to handle this: club versus team, eligibility, requirements. We talked about attendance, right? So if one of those 70 kids at the high school is a hardcore gamer, maybe he shows up because Mr. Sipe said you can't play on the team if you don't come to class. This is where we start tying all these threads together to improve and enrich our students' lives. It's going to cost us money, so we're going to talk about finding some funding sources, short and long term. How do we get the pilot program off the ground? And then, me working with Brian to look at our long-term budget and say, okay, well, I was going to buy these type of machines, but if we just shift that money around a little bit, this caliber machine would really lend itself to not just the classwork, but also the gaming side. So, we'd like to see if our kids are on board, and as an administrative team, we can find a way to make that projected plan work. Then I would see us coming back to the board with an update and just saying, this is where we want to go. This is what we think it's going to cost, and maybe look for some ideas for funding.
That'd be, so your plan was, before we derailed it, was to present details on the 26th, right?
I don't know about details just yet, but we just wanted to really present it to the board because let's be honest, the first step in this introductory process or this exploratory process is really to canvass student interest. And what we didn't want to do is put a survey on the street with all of our 7th through 12th grade students. Hey, do you guys have any interest in esports? And have it filter its way to the board. And then the board says, what are we hearing about this esports program? We don't know anything about this. So we kind of wanted to bring it to you guys on the front end, introduce it just conceptually, and with your blessing, canvass our students for interest and start moving forward with the planning process.
Well, I tell you, no matter whether the board decides yes or no, I applaud you guys for thinking outside the box on how we're going to keep these kids engaged. I don't know the Millbrook students, every one of them, but I gotta believe, I see the little ones in there and they're online, but they got a headset on with a joystick next to their hand. It's I applaud you guys. This is a really interesting idea.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
If you could just learn Among Us and Roblox for the younger kids, Elliot, you'd be a real hit.
One step at a time, sir.
Well, and then we got to buy some drones so we can do drone racing through the high school.
Nice.
That'd be cool. All right. Anyway, sorry about that, Elliot. Very good.
So I just have 2 more items. I just wanted to put on the board that we will be proposing a upcoming change order. And it's around addressing the exterior power mounting issues. I don't know if you remember that you approved an electrical project back in November, and the architect proposed 2 alternates. The bid documents included 2 alternates for consideration, and they recommended alternate 1 to start with, and then revisit at a later date when the best course of action could be determined, and the work that was not included in the alternate 1, it was in 2, could be added on to the project. So I just wanted to say that we're going to bring that to the board, either the next board meeting or the one in February.
Okay.
Okay.
I would just say, make sure you have, if we go to a different way, but then later on we have to do more, are we talking an extra 25,000, 50,000? And sort of what is the effect? Is it make the whole project a year, 2 years longer? Or so just the ability to, when you bring it in, to make sure that we have the ability to compare and contrast.
Sure, and this is just about the mounting of the exterior equipment. So originally it was about pole placement, and we're looking at potential of pad placement. So it'll be a 1-for-1 where this would become, whatever we choose to do or choose to recommend to you to do will be complete with this project.
Okay.
And I think in the beginning of the conversations and the bidding, it was determined that we could afford the expensive alternate 2, but just start slowly over time and say, okay, let's start with 1 and see how it sort of plays out, and then move to an alternate 2 if it made sense. So that's where we are right now on that.
Okay.
And then the last piece, I just wanted to follow up with the board regarding that advocacy piece around transportation and keeping our schools open. And that was through the Lower Hudson Education Coalition. And so you asked me to reach out to other districts to see what they do to promote this advocacy. And many of them just said they do mass notifications of the information. They post it on their website, and the boards have sent letters in. So I feel like that's very doable. If that's something you would like me to facilitate, I could use the template that they gave us and tailor it to Millbrook if needed with letterhead. And within that letter, there's an electronic survey for parents. So it's very easy for parents to go in and advocate for these 2 particular pieces at this time, and have their voices heard. And I can also send it in through mass communication as well. So however you'd like me to proceed with that is up to you.
I mean, personally, I think we ought to, put it out there for families to take, take action if they want to. I'm okay with submitting a board letter as well. I just don't know whether the rest of the board is on board, or do you want to, we could also do it as board members, do each one of us, if we choose to do it.
Yeah, you could do it as community members. Absolutely.
The only thing I always worry about is, do they even read it? But that's besides the point, I guess.
Well, Cuomo responded to me. I submitted mine. And he sent me an email thanking me.
Thank you very much. Your name here.
I would say we should do it because, it's budget time. It sends a message too. It's budget time, and he came out with State of State. Didn't talk tons about school yet, but I think he's doing a multiple State of the State. I think, if I remember right. So it may shape things.
What do you guys think? Submit it as a board? And put it on our website? Well, does anybody have a problem with that?
Probably as a board would be better.
Okay. One going once, going twice. All right. Why don't we go ahead, Laura, and I assume I'll have to sign it. So just let me know and I'll come up.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
That's great. Yep. And I know the coalition has a lot of work that they're doing. So this is maybe just a good start for us to start advocating publicly for certain things that are important to us as a district.
Yeah, I mean, the lower Hudson Valley used to be, I think we've actually made progress with them. But it used to be, they really focused on the lower Hudson Valley, and that was sort of it. But part of it is, our engagement as well. So, okay.
Great. Cheryl, do you know if that requires a resolution at all, or we can just send a letter?
We should check with Margot, but I believe when we talked about it at the last meeting, that we said that it didn't require it and you could just send the letter.
Okay, we'll double check on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so in old business, we have excuse me. We have where did it go? There we go. We have a resolution, or motion to approve the following, be it resolved, blah, blah, blah. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do you want to just give us a quick, what was updated?
Sure, Brian, do you want to take care of that? You want to
Sure.
explain? Thank you.
Yeah. So you already approved the corrective action plan in October, as you can see by the resolution. And then we submitted because the state says you have to submit it through the portal. We got feedback from the Office of the State Comptroller, the first feedback that we've ever received, that they want us to include information about the how we're going to tackle the cafeteria deficit. So the original one, the original corrective action plan, you'll remember, only spoke about the extra class activity fund. This is the updated corrective action plan that includes the school lunch program. So every bit of that second category, and then there are some 5 associated bullets that are there. And upon your approval of this, we will be able to upload into the portal and meet the January 15th deadline.
Okay.
But obviously, we were well ahead of the curve on, with October 20th until the comptroller shared with us that they wanted to change around what they required. So,
Brian, when did the controller notify you that they wanted this school lunch program put in?
I'm not sure. They don't notify us directly. They put it in the portal.
Right.
So you actually have to see it in the portal. And Laura, do you know when that notification came?
No, but I will be able to find it quickly.
Okay.
It's not that big.
When we continue, I can find it.
No. I was just saying, I know I sent a string of questions on it prior, to it being on the agenda in its final form right now. I was just, it'd be nice in the future if we had a little more leeway in time to know about this coming down the pike.
Well, are you and was it John? Are you guys, you're okay with this?
Well, I'm okay with it now. John, have you read the string of emails concerning it?
Yes.
And we're good, John?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, anybody other questions, other comments?
Do they want any kind of follow-up after this?
No, the follow-up will exist when we are audited again, and they'll see whether or not there's an existing note in the management letter.
This doesn't say when we'll have this implemented by, does it? It says we're looking into things. Don't you think they?
That's right.
You think they want to know when?
Mm-hmm.
We're not. I guess, yeah, well, I guess it's kind of hard to say. You can't promise to remove a deficit completely.
Right, and so we did the best that we could with this. The challenge about this is if they're going to notify us that they want a corrective action plan in December, half the year is over already. So that's a bit of a challenge too. So that's why we say we're going to do our best to reverse the cafeteria deficit, taking the following steps.
I mean, Brian, you've told us, many times that this is very common for districts. So I'm kind of surprised, I mean, I get why they're doing what they're doing, but it seems like everybody's got pretty much the same story.
Yeah.
I think it's the amount.
And the interesting thing is this has been I'm sorry, Howard.
Oh, I think it's the amount this time that they probably flagged the large overage in the deficit.
We've had worse in past years.
Really?
So that wouldn't be a reason. But for whatever reason, they decided that despite the fact that it's been a note on our management letter for probably since 13-14, whatever their reason is. So we complied, and Holly and I worked together to create this, and we saw some recommendations that you had too and added them. So thank you.
All right.
So what happens if it doesn't work? Like, we say all this and, we're still, next time we review, well, I mean, do they audit us every year on this?
Yes.
So, the auditors come out and they say, well, we told you had a problem and you gave us some steps that you were going to look at and assess, but it's gotten worse, or it's, maybe not as bad, but it's almost as bad. I mean, what happens? We just go, sorry, we'll we'll do
It's a
it.
continuous improvement process, right? So they note it again. So as an example, we made an additional, I'm going to say $7,000 over the summer. We would hope, by Holly's leadership with the summer program and doing something different, we would hope that at the very least our new deficit would be $7,000 less, because we're trying something and we're just doing continuous improvement. So, like I said, it's a note that's been on our management letter for the past 7. We're hoping to whittle down at it, but what will happen is the auditors will do the same thing. They'll audit us. If it's something that we're still in deficit, we'll talk about what we did that worked well, and we'll talk about things that didn't work as well and that we're going to have to modify again.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any against? Okay. All right. Let's see. Authorize. Okay, in the new business section, we have a motion to authorize a memorandum of understanding with Dutchess County Department of Behavioral and Community, and Community Health. Anything you want to say about that? Well, actually, do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so this, I'm assuming this is sort of the, yes, you can go do this. Is that what this is? Or, does this include ordering the testing kits?
This allows me to do so. So this was part of the step towards requesting the testing.
Okay. Do we have to request any training, or is it just a matter of swabbing a cheek and?
There's training. Our nurses are trained. It's a very short training. You're swabbing the bulb with a nasal.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We sort of spent a lot of time on this before. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? Okay,
Thank you.
there you go. Let's see. Oh man, my unfavorite part. The first one is the resignation of Arlene Looney, with great sadness. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Like I said, I'd just like to say thank you to Arlene for everything she's done over the years. Her dedication to the district is amazing.
35 years.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Thanks, Arlene.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Now, this one caught me off guard.
Part 2.
Sarah Rizzo, retiring. Do I have a motion?
Nope, not going to accept it.
There you go. No.
Sorry, Sarah.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion other than I don't know. I feel like, you know, Sarah's retiring. It seems like she just was started here. I mean, good Lord.
28 years.
That's a huge hole to leave in the in Elm Drive. But any other comments?
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank
Love.
you. Yeah, congrats.
Oh no, where are the kids gonna go do the maple tapping? They just have to go up and check on her.
There's a house up by the Skip Safari's house that is going to handle all that.
There's also one down on Rodrigo Mills, from my understanding too.
Yeah. Give me a year.
Mm.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Very good. And then, as her license plate would tell you, the Tooch. Again, man, I find it hard to believe she's even eligible for retirement, but 26 years. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
Oh, Miss Tucci.
Yeah.
Another one.
I know it.
Thanks for all her years of service. Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Congrats, but sad to see you go.
Cool. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Wow. All right. We have a donation from James and Robin Waters. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, very cool.
Thank you.
Just one question though. Do we have the money? I remember I think Laura and I talked about this years ago. We got a donation for a piano, I think it was a grand piano. And there was a lot of discussion about the money to keep it up and keep it tuned and whatever else has to be done. We're okay with that? We know where we're gonna, if there's anything that goes along with this?
Yeah, Dan, I spoke with Dan Dunninger just to make sure, or just to inquire about any costs. And he said, nope. I mean, if something breaks, they'll fix it, but there's not an ongoing maintenance for any of these items. The vibraphone, which I hear is in the hands of a very appreciative senior right now. Then there's the practice bell set, keyboard and stand, and drum set parts. So he said no ongoing maintenance costs for any of those.
Cool. And we can use the bell set for board meetings?
Or the drum set.
Yeah.
Oh yes, the drum set. Yes. I'm in charge
Anyway.
of that. I'm in charge of that one.
Like when Perry makes a bad joke, you go, boom, boom.
Boom.
That's right. Anyway, to the Waters, thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right. All right, Cheryl, do we have any questions from the public?
We do not.
Okay. Future agenda items. We've got a number of things lined up for the 26th. We're going to start the budget discussions on the 26th and work our way through. We got to work out, I know it's not a board meeting per se, but we need to figure out where in our schedule a retreat would work. But is there anything on here that's missing, for future? I know stuff comes up, but I'm trying to plan the presentations. Okay. This is tough to do. Let's see. Of the stuff that's on the 26th, I think the food service presentation these are ones we've already requested. So, some of them are just really the committees, safety and security. Where are you? When have you met? What's the latest and greatest, biggest issues, that kind of stuff. Tech committee vision is, what I want to do is get back to, we used to have, on a regular basis, each of the committees just give us an update. We also need to add back in stuff like, the MEF rep, the PTO rep, getting those back on the agenda. But I also know that, the updates are limited. Is there anything specific, especially on the 26th, that anybody is looking for? We'll also talk, in the tech committee about different areas. Anything that somebody, has in their sort of craw that they want to make sure gets brought into the 26th?
Harry, would it be all right if Elliot shared a couple of his ideas and then Holly, after discussing sort of what he's thinking and maybe the same as what you're thinking, or layered on top of that, and then after that have Holly just speak about some items that she could present, and then what the board would like? Maybe you're sharing the same ideas.
Sure.
Elliot, you want to start? Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Laura. So, there's a lot to cover, and obviously, as Perry joked about earlier, there's so many things that I have a finger in this district in terms of what's happening and what we're planning for. We've done a lot in the last 8-9 months, and I kind of just wanted to start the conversation at the next board meeting, recapping all the things that we've done, and some of them we did really quickly, and some of them we didn't have a whole lot of in-depth discussion about, but just to give the board an update, an overview of what we've accomplished this school year so far. And then, speak to what's really going on and what's in progress for, I'd say, the right now in the winter through the spring and the balance of this school year. And then I think, a couple of folks mentioned earlier, what's the long range plan? What's the vision for technology in the district, both as the instructional technology department, but also in all the other ways that we affect and influence our other departments, all of our schools, and how we do what we do. So there's going to be, the way that I'm thinking about it is just kind of where we've been recently, what we have going on right now, where we're going for the balance of the year, but also where we're going long term, and the tools and resources and really the help that we're going to need to get there. Because I think a lot of the things that we're looking at, both for the balance of this year, but also for the years to follow, are going to require administrative support, a lot of staff input, and certainly some board input and guidance. So that's kind of the way that I'm looking at packaging that conversation. Certainly we'll discuss esports as an aspect of that, and how technology marries to instruction and supports all of these efforts together.
The only thing I would add, Elliot, is to sort of create a separate section that will take into executive session on cyber, our plans for auditing and cybering and protection.
Certainly something I was going to generally touch on in public session, just that it's happening. But yes, I can create some additional content for a little bit of a deeper dive in exec session if that's the way the board wants to go.
Anything else anybody is, and I'm assuming we've surveyed the teachers, and they've given us the man, if I had this, or if I could do this, or if this was done differently. I'm assuming you've got most of that, Elliot, to talk us through as far as the plan is concerned.
I'm sorry, could you just restate that? I think
I'm assuming teachers have come to you and said, if we had an automated way of just recording who was on each, and I'm making this up, automated way of recording who was on every session, it would give us better visibility into truancy. I don't know, I'm making it up, but I'm assuming you've gotten that input from teachers and staff in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Kirsten's doing a great job of providing training, but also tracking what we're training on. So it's everything from piloting new software that can do things that we haven't been able to do before, and leveraging the tools that we have in different ways. And we talked about some of that earlier with engagement over remote learning models. So yeah, we have that information available. I can present it a couple of different ways. I was going to do that at the end of the year, and maybe we'll do now a snapshot, and we'll follow up, in June, July with just a look at how we're supporting instruction as our department with our technology specialist, really highlighting what the most common needs are and the way that we've been able to best affect change and support in that effort.
Okay. Anything else for Elliot? Okay.
On a side note, Perry, you mentioned it before. I've been attending all the MEF meetings, so if you want an update, I can surely give you a quick one.
Okay.
Next meeting.
All right. Holly?
Holly, you're muted.
There we go. Thanks for having me. I guess we're all, we know that school lunch is such a unique entity in an educational environment, but we've learned in this year how it has helped bring community together and equity to students who really need food service. And I'm just so proud to be part of this amazing team. And I am encouraged and welcome the opportunity to provide a comprehensive presentation that will answer all of your questions at the next board meeting. So one topic that came to mind that seems critical at the moment for me and our district is a new staffing pattern. As we just heard, Miss Arlene Looney will be retiring after 35 years with us. While we are overjoyed for her and wish her the very best, her experience, knowledge, and dedication will be sorely missed. Sorry about that. Some other things that I thought that might be good to bring to your attention or that you might have interest in learning more about are the requirements of a meal, putting a meal together and menu planning, purchasing, commodities and bidding, revenues and expenditures, inventory and budgeting, and how that all plays into formulating school food service. And of course, anything else that you would like to hear about or have questions on. So I'm going to make a list as you let me know what you'd like to hear.
I mean, especially since we just went through that audit memo, just something that makes sure we can see how things are tracking.
Absolutely.
And so we're spending this, we've recovered this, we haven't received our aid, but it should be here any day. Whatever will give us a picture of where we are from the financial standpoint.
In this current school year?
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, also, Holly, in the letter, the revised letter that's going up to the controller, I know you put in the first bullet point, was it the first? Yep. We will look at more cost-effective purchases, understanding that we may have to sacrifice student choice for efficiency. If you can, just address what you mean by that when you do the presentation about how by being more cost-effective, we are going to lose the student choice for efficiency reasons.
Yeah, I would make sure that, well before that meeting, since we do have this subcommittee, that they've been through it, because personally, I'm going to look to those folks to say, yay or nay. I mean, this makes sense or it doesn't. So I would get your presentation to Howard and John, and is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Give them enough time to give you feedback on it.
Holly, also, what about your staffing? Are you okay with the amount of staff that you have? Like, you can talk to us about that. Look at the schools. Are you, are the schools being utilized the way they should? Like I know that you do a lot of the middle school, I think, if I'm saying that correctly. Like what's it like in the different schools?
Anybody else? All right. You good, Holly?
I am, thank you.
Holly, is there anything that you want to talk about too? Like, is there anything else that's on your mind that you want to discuss? You don't have to answer me. I'm just saying, like, write it down. Like, you don't have to answer me now, but just, you're asking us what we want. Now I'm asking you, what do you want?
Thank you.
You know what I mean? So put it out,
Thank you.
Holly, I was talking and I was muted myself.
Oh.
I would think for the board, you did a pretty good presentation. I think it was 2 presentations ago, or maybe it was the last presentation. I have one copy, but I don't have the other copy. You kind of talked about in general how things went year to year. You talked about some of the challenges. You talked about how you coped with them. I think that's probably a good board kind of level to be at. And the specifics you talked about, I think we can go through it as a committee, maybe dive in deeper with those topics, because that we don't want a presentation to go on for 45 minutes or anything like that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but, yeah. So, and bring us up to speed, because I think the last time we saw you was
The year before last.
the year before last.
Mm-hmm.
We saw you, I think, in the middle of a year.
Yep, February.
And then before that. So it's like, if you could bring us to before that up to now, I don't know what's really happened in food service for those past 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Well,
that kind of summary.
That kind of brings up a point, John. Who does the I don't know if it's facilities or you, like the plan, the long-term plan for the cafeteria. We're going to need a new oven. I don't know what you need, but we're thinking about changing the serving out of one cafeteria, but it's going to take a capital stuff that from food services is really going to need to go into this long-term plan. If we've got a plan to, maybe we're going to have a barbecue set outside. Whatever it is, let's talk now. Let's not just talk about food services like, I made 28 of these today. Let's talk about where you see food services going.
That would also be a conversation with the architect when we select one, and when they do, they would meet with Holly also to talk about what outdated equipment we currently have that needs to be replaced. And that you're right, that would be built in ultimately to a capital in a capital project.
But assuming we're going to go back to like even and again, I don't know if this is true, but if the I'll call it shutdown of the cafeteria, so it's not like the kids going through and getting their chocolate milk and all that stuff. It's pack it up and send it out. If that has sort of changed, like you've made changes and now you're going to have to someday make changes to go back to a more flexible meal system. If it would be good to have a view of the future of and I don't mean like I'm going to go to wheat bread versus white bread. It's more about the overall food services
Infrastructure.
Yeah, and if there are things that are going to have to be done in the next few years, not just equipment, but the meals themselves, if there's regulations that have been put out, although I doubt it for the last 18 months or 12 months, but if there's things that have been put out that are suddenly going to they've changed the way you do things and now you've got to change again, things you're worried about. But again, as John said,
like a New York perspective, really.
Yeah.
State perspective.
Yep.
ministry.
Yeah, and would you like that to be around? So eventually, we're going to be out of the pandemic. So one of the things that we were brainstorming and thinking about, even in preparation for this meeting, is food services. To your point, Perry, much different right now than it was a year ago. And if we can get back to some version of normalcy, it's going to be that much different. So, do you want it? I guess some feedback in terms of streamlining a presentation. Do you want to be able to know what's going on now and compare it to where we would be going? Or can we just focus on where we would be when we get back to normal?
Yeah, I think that's the best. I mean, where you are now, other than, here's where we are with the finances and, all that stuff. I think it is what it is right now. It's a matter of where's it going to be? Let's say the pandemic is in the books by, I don't know, by September of this year. So what does that do to us? And then, what you think is going to be the next phase of food services? Do we get away from, are we going to go to all custom orders? Not orders, but you know what I mean? Like I want this and I want that.
And if it's your vision that we work with the subcommittee on that prior to presenting, do you want to move it a meeting or do you want to leave it on the 26th still? Is there enough time to be able to meet with John and Howard and be able to turn that around? And either way is fine, but asking the question, I don't know what John and Howard's schedule is like.
I mean, we can push. Yeah, I'll let John and Howard, think that through and then talk to you and Holly about it.
Great.
And then if we need to push it to February or whatever, okay. I mean, I'd rather have, you guys all aligned when you present.
Great.
All right.
Yes, thank
So
you.
John and Howard will be in touch.
Okay.
All right. Okay. I think the only thing we have left is executive session. Do we have a motion to go to executive session for the discussion of employment history of particular persons regarding future tenure appointments?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right. Cheryl, why don't you just send the board and Laura for like, I don't even know if we need to do that. Well, I'll tell you what, we send, I don't know who you want to do this discussion. Is it the principals or?
You're on mute, Laura.
Trying not to be that person where everybody has to tell me I'm on mute.
That would be me.
Only 2 out of 10 maybe today.
Yeah,
Caroline and the principals
okay.
would be great.
All right, cool.
Good night, everybody.
See you.
Night, Brian.
All right.
Thanks, Holly.
Bye, Holly.
Night, Holly.
Bye, Holly. Bye, Brian.
Good
Night,
night.
Elliot.
Bye, Brian.
Bye, Elliot.
Yeah.
Be in touch, Claudia, also.
Okay, Brian, I'll talk to you soon. Bye, Elliot.
Let me know, Elliot, when you have those new gaming chairs.
Get to buy chairs too? Awesome.
Count me in as coach, Elliot.
Yeah.
All right.
I need one to test it out at home on these board meetings.
I was just gonna say, get one and tell them that it came broken and just send it over.
Remember all this when I bring the price list in the next board meeting.
Jen and Claudia, you're both on mute. Can't hear you. Sorry. Bye.
Brookstone ones. I like the Brookstone ones, Ellie, in case you're wondering. Brookstone.
I'm on it. I'm all over it.
Okay, thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Isn't this what your son did? Didn't your son do this, John?
Yes, still is.
There you go, man. Now we know where we get our coach from.
Yeah. Worth a year.
Okay, you should see your invite.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
You're welcome.